Chapter 1433. At the Expeditionary Army Outpost. An exploration fleet was docked at the dock. Harrison and a group of teammates alighted from the spaceship, took off their life support helmets, and took a deep breath. I'm suffocating. The air in the base's large ecological shield is still the best. After being outside for so many days, the spaceship's gas filter is already smelly. Really? Why don't I feel anything? Don't you know that our ancient Kate's sense of smell is more sensitive than most galactic species? It's a pity that we haven't gained anything after going out for so long. Harrison rubbed his forehead as he listened to the chatter of his team members. He was a little frustrated. Ever since he discovered the Realmless King as an ally, the upper echelons had let him lead an expedition team alone. He had gone from being a follower to a team commander and had a certain degree of freedom to formulate exploration plans. Blackstar had always said that Harrison was lucky, and Harrison was willing to believe that it was true. He secretly hoped that his luck would help him find the World Tree's main body and end the war as soon as possible. However, after so many years, the luck that he had high hopes for seemed to have fallen silent. Other than escaping the pursuit of the World Tree's blessed race a few times, there were no new achievements in the exploration. Now that the Expeditionary Army's exploration progress had stagnated, Harrison was anxious and worried. As the saying went, if one often walked by the river, one's shoes would get wet. The Expeditionary Army wandered around the World Tree's territory and encountered pursuers time and time again. He felt that there would be a time when they would fail. At this moment, a team member patted Harrison's shoulder and said, "Captain, how long will we rest before the next exploration?" 10 days. Harrison came back to his senses. Got it. Let's go to the base cafeteria to eat. Do you want to join us? No. I'll report to the logistics department first and get them to repair the spaceship. I still have to write a routine report later. Harrison waved his hand. All right, we'll bring you some food. What do you want to eat? Then I want. Harrison was about to say something when he suddenly stopped. At this moment, his heart palpitated. Without waiting for an answer, the team member blinked in confusion and asked again, "Why didn't you say anything? What do you want to eat?" Harrison's heart was uneasy, and he suddenly had a strong sense of vigilance. He could not help but come back to himself and look at the scenery outside the spaceport, staring at one spot. "What are you looking at?" The team members turned their heads and followed Harrison's gaze. All they saw was the sunset of the secondary dimension, like an oil painting with a historical aura. However, they did not see anything unusual. Something's wrong. Harrison grew even more alarmed. The team member wanted to ask more, but at this moment, the dimensional barrier in the distance suddenly lit up with a blue light and quickly turned into a huge spatial vortex. It was as if a hole had been torn open, and the green, blessed race of the World Tree surged out like locusts, covering the sky and earth like dense green dots. Then, they rapidly enlarged in everyone's eyes. Woo 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 warning. The spatial barrier had been broken through. Enemy attack. An ear-piercing alarm suddenly rang throughout the base. All of the Expeditionary Army members who were resting and waiting for orders were startled. Nervous shouts, anxious running, and chaotic smashing sounds formed a chaotic concerto. Everyone evacuate at full speed. The base was preparing to self-destruct. The defense team was sacrificed to cover the retreat. The roar of the person in charge of the outpost sounded in the wide area communication channel. Half an hour ago, an expedition team had self-destructed and lost contact. He was still investigating this matter and did not know if the news had been leaked. He did not expect the World Tree to arrive so quickly. The World Tree had a huge influence in the secondary dimension, and the defense of this outpost was limited. The dimensional coordinates had already been exposed, and if they continued to fight, it would attract more World Tree-blessed race. In the plan formulated by the three universal civilizations, if this outpost was attacked, the first task was to self-destruct to clear the traces and let the Expeditionary Army retreat quickly. Unless they had no choice, they would not choose to fight head-on. Let's go. Harrison's expression changed drastically. He could not care less about anything else, and quickly called for his shocked team members to board the ship at the port and start the engine. The outpost fell into chaos, and the automatic defense team hurriedly activated to fight the endless stream of World Tree blessed race members to buy time. The Expeditionary Army members behind swarmed toward the boathouse and quickly found a ride to escape. Streams of light shot out from the base, scattering and retreating. They opened spatial rifts and escaped to different secondary dimensions. Very soon, the vanguard of the World Tree blessed race clashed head-on with the defense team of the outpost. In an instant, countless battleships exploded into fireworks. At the same time, the fortresses of the outpost activated their self-destruct procedures and exploded. The entrance to the main material universe was also destroyed by the physical missiles fired by the base. Flames soared into the sky, black smoke billowed, and countless wreckages fell. The defense team was quickly defeated, and the outpost self-destructed and quickly fell. The same scene happened in many secondary dimensions. The World Tree had obtained the precise dimensional coordinates half an hour ago and quickly gathered. They directly located the destination and carried out a large-scale blitzkrieg attack, catching them off guard. The bridgeheads built by the three universal civilizations in the Realmless King's territory were destroyed one by one, and a large number of expeditionary teams fled. On the other side, at the Realmless King's residence, a magic portal shining with a green light suddenly opened, and the secret tree king slowly walked out. The first thing he saw was the Black Mountain Range and the huge throne in the center of the dimension. However, there was no sign of the Realmless King on the throne. I'm a step too late? Or is he not at home? The secret tree king activated his perception spell and realized that the Realmless King was not hiding here. He could not help but feel a little regretful. The stable area controlled by the Realmless King was somewhat famous in this secondary dimension area. The World Tree blessed race had also heard of it, but they had never paid any attention to it. When he found out from the expedition team that the three universal civilizations were working with the Realmless King, the secret tree king wanted to go straight to the Realmless King's base camp and turn him into a member of the World Tree. However, he realized that the Realmless King was not at home, so he could only give up on this plan for the time being. The secret tree king raised his hand, and magic runes shot out, turning into surveillance spells that took root in this secondary dimension. If the Realmless King returned to his nest, he would come over and attack. After casually setting up the spell, the secret tree king summoned the teleportation gate and stepped in. The vortex quickly shrank and disappeared with him. At the same time, in the secondary dimension at the edge of the Realmless King's territory, space was slowly collapsing, and the dimensional energy was being devoured by the pivotal snake. At the side, the Realmless King, who was in charge of feeding, suddenly stopped, and his heart tightened. He had a basic sense of the territory he controlled. Just now, he had sensed that the World Tree army had attacked the secondary dimensions linked to the three universal civilizations one after another. Almost all the outposts had fallen, and the scariest thing was that an uninvited guest had appeared in his nest. It was obvious that the guest was targeting him. The World Tree still came. The Realmless King panicked. Although he used the information of the three universal civilizations as a bargaining chip, unless he had no choice, he was not willing to reveal it to the World Tree. The risk was too high. Now that the World Tree had its eyes on him, and beyond grade, it had gone straight to his nest. Even if he expressed his willingness to cooperate, the other party would most likely kill him to ensure the reliability of the information. Luckily, I came out. If I stayed at home, I would have become the World Tree's puppet. The Realmless King felt a lingering fear as he looked at the pivotal snake that was eating heartily. When Blackstar asked him to take out his territory to feed the pivotal snake, the Realmless King was still unwilling. Now that he saw it, he could only rejoice. If not for Blackstar forcing him to do this, he would not have come out to walk the pivotal snake today. He would most likely have been blocked by the World Tree experts at home. That would be bad. To round things up, Blackstar even saved my life. I can't go back. I can only walk this path to the end. The Realmless King quickly made up his mind. He did not want to be involved in the war between two universal civilizations. But back then, a trusted subordinate had provoked the three universal civilizations first, and he had already been dragged into the situation. After that, he had no choice but to cooperate with the three universal civilizations. Now, it was already difficult for him to get out of it. Even if he wanted to stay out of it, he could not. Since the World Tree had already targeted him, he could only place his bet and hug the thighs of the three universal civilizations to get rid of the World Tree. Thinking of this, the realmless king turned around and reported the situation to the mechanical oracle who was monitoring the pivotal snake. The battle did not last long. The blessed race of the World Tree destroyed the expeditionary army outpost, and the surprise attack ended very quickly. A large number of expeditionary teams scattered and fled. A portion of the World Tree fleet chased after them along the fluctuations of the dimension travel, while the remaining troops had already begun to clean up the battlefield, summarize the results of the battle, and wrap up the work. Routes of the World Tree extended out from the spatial rift one after another, with expeditionary army spaceships hanging on them. The secret Tree King floated at the side with his eyes closed and shared his memories. Not long after, the secret Tree King opened his eyes again. His originally relaxed expression was now extremely solemn. I didn't expect the Mother Tree's natural enemy to be controlled by the enemy. The situation is dangerous. Destroying the enemies who were searching for the Mother Tree's main body was originally just a matter of convenience, but he did not expect to find traces of the Mother Tree's natural enemy. This was not good news. If the Mother Tree's natural enemy entered the mature stage, it would be able to sense the location of the Mother Tree's main body. If it only moved independently, it would not be a big threat. However, if it was controlled by the enemy, the threat level would soar to the extreme. This meant that the enemy could use this to find the Mother Tree's main body. The secret Tree King knew the seriousness of the matter. This meant that the World Tree, which was originally fighting a war of attrition without any pressure, had to race against time. They had to either kill the pivotal snake before it reached adulthood or completely defeat the three universal civilizations before that. The only good news was that the pivotal snake had just been born, and it would take a long time for it to reach adulthood. He immediately sent this matter to the ancestral Tree King. The next moment, the ancestral Tree King's deep voice sounded in the mental network. You did well. Otherwise, we would still be in the dark. Mobilize a portion of the high-level combatants to chase after the Mother Tree's natural enemy. We must get rid of it. All right, I happen to obtain the coordinates of the other party's territory in the secondary dimensions from the memories of these people. I have a new target. Fortitude Tree King, and I will be ready to provide support at any time. I'll leave the rest to you. The ancestral Tree King nodded. It just so happens that we can successfully open up the secondary dimension battlefront this time and solve the problem together. A cold light flashed in the secret Tree King's eyes. He was not satisfied with destroying the outposts of the three universal civilizations. What he had his eyes on was the base camp of the three universal civilizations that had been developing for a long time in the secondary dimensions. The two sides had been fighting for more than 10 years. It was only today that they finally grasped a portion of the general situation of the three universal civilizations and were no longer led by the nose. They finally had a breakthrough in the battle. Explored Universe Frontline Base. Han Xiao was listening to the battle meeting when the mechanical oracle's report suddenly sounded in his mind. Oh, the World Tree found the expeditionary army's outpost and launched a surprise attack. Has it succeeded? Han Xiao frowned. He was a little surprised by this, but not too surprised. As the expeditionary army's exploration time increased, the risk of being exposed also increased. He was already mentally prepared. The only thing that made him feel strange was the subtlety of time. It had only been a few days since he had returned from the expeditionary army's outpost. He was still thinking about the follow-up plan when the World Tree broke through the outpost. It seemed like a coincidence, but Han Xiao felt that there was something fishy about it. The secondary dimension battlefield has still been opened. That's the World Tree's home ground. They probably obtained the coordinates of the shallow dimension in this wave of attacks. Fighting on two fronts is disadvantageous to the three universal civilizations. However, the three universal civilizations have also made preparations in the secondary dimension. The situation won't be as bad as in my previous life. Han Xiao pondered. At this moment, Simon, who was talking about tactics, suddenly paused. A remote projection of a high-ranking military official appeared on the conference table. His expression was extremely serious as he spoke in a deep voice. Emergency situation. The Secondary Dimension Expeditionary Army's outpost was ambushed by the World Tree, and almost all of them fell. Some of the information was leaked, and the World Tree might have obtained the coordinates of the shallow dimension. It is estimated that they will open a second front line. We urgently need high-level combatants to reinforce them. The three universal civilizations notification was one step slower than the mechanical oracles. As soon as he said that, all the officers present trembled in shock. They all subconsciously turned to look at Han Xiao. Han Xiao nodded slowly and asked, "Who is the enemy? Who's leading the enemy?" According to the information from the front line, it's a super who has never appeared before. The figure of the secret Tree King was projected on the virtual screen. This was a photo taken before the base self-destructed and sent back to the main artificial intelligence. Secret Tree King. Han Xiao recognized this person at a glance and narrowed his eyes. "All right, leave this to me." At this moment, Simon spoke with a frown. "Fighting on two fronts will implicate our high-level combatants. Aurora won't be able to split herself up. At the same time, the enemy might deliberately avoid Black Star and use foreign experts. I definitely agree to reinforce the secondary dimension, but the front line is an important battlefield. We have to maintain a sufficient number of high-level combatants. This isn't a big problem. I have enough King mechanical suits to quickly move between the two sides. Plus, I have more people." Han Xiao nodded. Compared to the terrifying galactic battlefield, the secondary dimension world's uniqueness caused the battlefield to be extremely divided, which indirectly increased the importance of individual strength in the secondary dimension battlefield. It was time for the group of nerds in the Holy Covenant organization who had been idle for decades to come into play. Furthermore, this secret Tree King was worth his time. Chapter 1434. In the white desert where the radiation storm was raging, a strong light suddenly flashed. An expedition starship emitting flames drilled out of the crack and fell as if it had lost its power. It crashed into the ground with a loud bang, causing white sand to fill the sky. The remaining momentum did not weaken as it rolled and plowed a deep ravine on the ground. Wherever it passed, a white dragon was raised. The azure particle shield that was on the verge of shattering endured the impact and flickered a few times like a light bulb with bad contact. Then it suddenly disappeared. The spaceship sank and its head stabbed into the desert. Its tail was raised high, and the distorted propulsion nozzle flashed with electric sparks. With a sudden shake, it finally malfunctioned and spewed out black smoke. Clang, clang, clang. The cabin door of the spaceship was stuck, and there was a sound of impact coming from inside. The alloy door panel bulged out, and then it was sent flying with a bang. The deformed cabin door smashed into the sand and slid more than 10 meters away. Harrison and the others walked out while holding their injuries. Their bodies swayed as if they had drunk fake wine. The gravity-stabilizing device and gyroscope of the spaceship malfunctioned, and everyone was dizzy from the fall. One of the team members looked at the paralyzed spaceship and said in a panicked tone, "It's over. The spaceship has been destroyed. We can't escape. Don't panic. The enemy didn't chase after us. Hurry up and repair it." Harrison held his dizzy head and gritted his teeth as he ordered the panicked team members to repair the spaceship. The outpost was attacked, and a large number of expedition teams fled in all directions. The blessed race of the World Tree chased after them nonstop, and they also encountered enemies. The team only had one last spaceship left, and it was not easy for them to shake off the pursuers. However, the spaceship that had endured the fierce attacks was overloaded to the limit and lay there. "I wonder how the outpost is now," a team member muttered to himself. "It's definitely gone." The World Tree came prepared. With the armed forces of the outpost, it's impossible for it to survive. When we were escaping, the commander was still giving orders in the main control room. I'm afraid he has already sacrificed himself in the self-destruction and died with the base. A sorrowful atmosphere pervaded the crowd. After working together for more than 10 years, many expeditionary army members were already familiar with each other. At this moment, so many of their comrades' futures were uncertain and their odds were stacked against them. Everyone was endlessly worried. The situation of the World Tree's attack should have been transmitted back to the main universe. Before I evacuated, I had already sent a message to His Excellency Blackstar through the quantum network base station of the outpost. He should have received it, but he hasn't come to help yet. I don't know. Harrison's tone was hesitant. The moment he was attacked, he had sent a request for help. During the process of escaping, he had been protecting the throne that Blackstar had specially left for him. He had been waiting for Han Shao to arrive, but there had been no response until now. Can we contact him again? Someone asked hurriedly. Not at the moment. There is no base station that can be connected to. We can't communicate with the outside world for the time being. Harrison was only halfway through his sentence when a spatial fluctuation suddenly appeared on the spaceship. Han Shao, who had teleported over, walked out of the broken hatch. Everyone was pleasantly surprised to see him. Your Excellency Blackstar, you're finally here. We're saved. Han Shao raised his hand and gestured for everyone to control their emotions. He then looked at Harrison and sized him up. Looks like you're in good condition. You're not injured. Harrison walked up with a disappointed expression and said, You're late. The outpost has already fallen. The Han Shao interrupted him and nodded. All right, I already know about the situation. If the outpost is gone, so be it. The 3 universal civilizations have already arranged for people to pick up the other scattered expeditionary army soldiers. This time, I'm mainly here to pick you up and your teammates. Han Shao had already received Harrison's request for help when he received the emergency notice from the 3 universal civilizations in the Siebert base's operations room. The reason why he had only rushed over now was because he had taken the time to mobilize the high-level combatants of the association. He had even gone to the Realmless King's side to protect the pivotal snake and hide it in a secret place. After doing these important things, he came to pick up Harrison. Han Shao was not afraid that something would happen to Harrison. He had been using the Observer's mark to monitor Harrison's situation. Seeing that he was safe, he did not teleport over immediately. What about the outpost? Aren't you going to provide support? Harrison asked. There's no need. The dimensional coordinates of the various outposts have been exposed, and it's not suitable to rebuild the base. Even if we want to rebuild the outpost, it will be somewhere else. The losses this time aren't too big. The outpost has already played its role over the years. Han Shao waved his hand. The purpose of the outpost was only to facilitate the expeditionary army's exploration of the deeper secondary dimensions, and the coordinates of the various dimensions had long been recorded in the database. The coordinates of the Realmless King's territory and the surrounding area of the World Tree were already under the control of the 3 universal civilizations, which meant that these places had become new shallow dimensions. Thanks to the special structure of the secondary dimension world, with the coordinates in hand, even if there were no outposts, the follow-up troops could quickly jump over. They did not have to travel for many years like normal exploration. This was the most important result. As for the outpost itself, it did not have irreplaceable value. With these coordinates in hand, they could rebuild it at any time. Therefore, this loss was nothing in the eyes of the 3 universal civilizations. What they were more concerned about was the extent of the information leak. Harrison nodded and asked, Then what are we going to do next? I'll bring you to the base camp of the 3 universal civilizations in the secondary dimension world. They have already gathered their troops there and are preparing to deal with the possible attack of the World Tree. The coordinates might have been leaked this time, so the World Tree opening up the secondary dimension battlefront should be a foregone conclusion. Next, the 3 universal civilizations will have to face a 2-front battle. After sending you off, I still have to have a short meeting with the leaders of the 3 universal civilizations to discuss this matter. Han Shao said casually. His tone was calm and not worried at all. At this time, the World Tree was most likely still cleaning up the battlefield in the various outpost dimensions, but he had no intention of coming back. Even if he went over, the Secret Tree King might not appear. He might as well wait for the Secret Tree King to start fighting on two fronts while he waited for him to strike and give him his favorite slap. If the World Tree had the coordinates of the shallow dimension, it would not take long to jump over, and it would even be qualified to start another round of Blitzkrieg. Therefore, Han Xiao estimated that the Secret Tree King would not take too long. Han Xiao gave a simple explanation and did not say anything else. He raised his hand and summoned a new vehicle. After setting the destination coordinates, he called for everyone to board the ship and leave. Everyone obediently accepted the arrangements. Compared to the other Expeditionary Army soldiers, this group of people was lucky enough to benefit from Harrison and receive Han Xiao's personal help. They quickly escaped danger. The Galactic Alliance Army was divided into many armies. The Border Defense Army was responsible for guarding the front lines of the flickering world, while the Secondary Dimension Garrison was responsible for guarding the base camp area in the shallow dimension. This was the foundation of the three universal civilizations in the Secondary Dimension world. If it was wiped out, they would lose most of their control over the Secondary Dimension. A few hours after the outpost was attacked, all the war zones in the shallow dimension had already entered a state of combat readiness, and the garrison was ready for battle. At this moment, in one of the shallow dimension war zones, during the period when the blue energy was filled, the scene was like an ocean. A dynasty fleet that belonged to the secondary dimension garrison floated in midair, quietly waiting for orders. All the battleships were specialized in the secondary dimension. Compared to the dynasty's conventional heavy military starships, they were much longer and more proportionate. I've just received news that a battle has broken out at the front lines of the flickering world again. The World Tree Army has launched another attack. At this juncture, it's very likely that the enemy is using a two-pronged strategy. Therefore, the enemy will appear at any time. Everyone, stay alert. In the main ship, the commander spoke in the Army channel. The dynasty soldiers on the various ships were in high spirits and did not dare to be distracted. After waiting for a while, the fleet commander suddenly received orders from the other troops. His eyes focused, and he shouted with a deep voice, "The World Tree Army has already attacked. 34 war zones have already been invaded, and the other defending troops are exchanging fire. It will be here soon." As soon as he said that, the spatial walls suddenly opened, and beehive-like jumping points appeared one after another. The World Tree-blessed race swarmed out like a green tide. "Attack!" the fleet commander roared. Bang! Bang! The next moment, countless energy beams lit up in the field, crisscrossing to form a dense net, shattering a large wave of battleships. The two troops were not afraid at all. It was as if they had turned into two giant beasts, one black and one green, fiercely biting each other. They did not care about their own injuries and only cared about devouring each other's flesh. The same scene happened in hundreds and thousands of shallow dimensional war zones. War erupted. The war mode of the secondary dimensions was different from the main universe. Every war zone was a divided battlefield. With the help of the special geographical structure, countless fleets shuttled through the various secondary dimensions while exchanging fire, carrying out restraints, pulling, encircling, and so on. The situation changed rapidly, and the flames of war swept through countless small worlds. Pieces of secondary dimensions were blasted into dregs, and the remains were swallowed by the space storm. The high-level combatants of both sides also began to clash, and the battlefield moved from one dimension to another. In a certain shallow dimensional war zone that was riddled with holes, a teleportation gate hung high in the sky, spitting out a few beyond grade as from the three universal civilizations, all of them injured. Not far away, a green teleportation gate opened, and more holy tree emissaries chased after them. The few beyond grade as did not care about recuperating and quickly turn around a fight. They were once again at a disadvantage, and the situation was even worse. Don't even think about leaving the secondary dimensions alive. Several holy tree emissaries were filled with killing intent. Their attacks were ferocious, and their eyes flickered with joy. In the past, when they fought with the beyond grade as of the three universal civilizations, Due to the existence of that healing esper, all the high-level combatants of the enemy were like suicide squads, causing them to suffer greatly. They could not feel the joy of the world tree's infinite revival. However, it was different now. In the secondary dimension battlefield, due to the special battlefield structure, that healing esper would definitely be greatly restricted and could not take care of every battlefield. Furthermore, the healing esper did not even have the time to come over. The main force of the main universe had launched an attack, dragging many of the enemy's high-level combatants to the front lines. That healing esper was among them. Now that they saw how helpless the enemy was, the holy tree emissaries finally felt happy. At this moment, among the besieged beyond grade, as Austin was among them, half of the magic treasures on his body had already exploded, and he resisted the attacks with difficulty. His face was tense and solemn. The situation isn't looking good. If we don't receive any reinforcements, we will definitely suffer losses. Even with the Sanctum revival, most people did not want to fall to such a state. There was only one Aurora, and everyone wanted to stay on the front lines to fight alongside the healer. Therefore, there were very few high-level combatants who were willing to provide reinforcements in the shallow dimensions. Other than the direct descendants, none of the others were willing. They were all ordered to come and provide reinforcements. There was a huge difference in numbers between them and the enemy, and the situation was not looking good. At the side, Biger was fighting with a high-level holy tree emissary. Hearing this, he said in a low voice, "Don't panic, we still have reinforcements." "What reinforcements?" Austin frowned. At this moment, the spatial wall far away from the battlefield suddenly opened, and an unmarked fleet broke into the battlefield. They directly fired a dense number of sharp missiles at the World Tree Blessed race, which exploded when they hit the shield. The next moment, the place where the missiles exploded turned into spatial turbulence, directly sweeping up a group of World Tree Blessed race members and disappearing without a trace. "This is..." Austin's pupils constricted. "The Holy Covenant's dimensional exile bullet," Biger continued. "Holy Covenant? What is that?" Before Austin could ask, waves of beyond grade A fluctuations soared into the sky. Boom! A few unfamiliar beyond grade as flew out of this mysterious fleet and quickly approached, joining the battle and launching a fierce attack on the Holy Tree emissary. The pressure on Austin lessened, and he hurriedly retreated a distance. Watching the two sides fight, he was shocked. "These are the reinforcements you were talking about? Who are they? Don't you think they look familiar?" Biger raised his brows. Austin looked over, and his expression changed. He recognized a few people. They were all famous primordial ones in history. When he thought about Biger's identity, he suddenly realized something and became bewildered. "They're all revivers like you? I thought Black Star didn't revive them. When did this happen?" "You'll know the details in the future. Now is not the time to talk about it." Biger did not explain further. He dodged the enemy's counterattack and pierced through the enemy's chest with a forbidden spell. Austin's heart skipped a beat. He looked at them deeply and did not ask any more questions, rejoining the battle. Similar scenes happened in many war zones. The dozens of revivers who had been hiding in the Holy Covenant organization for many years finally participated in the battle for the first time. They assisted the beyond grade as of the various paths and quickly stabilized the situation of the high-level combatants. Not only was the World Tree surprised by this wave of reinforcements, even the three universal civilizations' frontline army was confused. For a moment, they could not figure out the origins of this batch of reinforcements. At the same time, the leaders of the three universal civilizations who were monitoring the secondary dimension battle turned to look at Han Xiao, who was watching the battle together in the office. Their expressions were very subtle, mixed with shock, pain, and other complicated emotions. "Black Star, aren't you going to explain?" Chapter 1435. Han Xiao did not even turn around as he casually replied, "As you can see, these are the reinforcements I pulled in to fill the gap in our two-front battle." The ethereal Pope knocked on the table with his knuckles and said with a deep voice, "Don't play dumb. I'm asking how they came. When did you revive these people?" Hearing this, Han Xiao turned his head and glanced at the three of them, his tone faint. Do you think all the revivers are willing to appear in public? I never said that the ones in the association are all the revivers. As for who exactly I revived, I have no obligation to tell others. Don't ask what you shouldn't ask. The three of them choked and looked at him deeply. They did not need to think too much to guess that this was Black Star's backup plan. He had secretly hidden a group of revivers. It was most likely arranged during the confrontation back then as a trump card against the three universal civilizations. If he had stubbornly launched the purge back then, the outcome would have been hard to say. Now that Han Xiao had revealed this trump card, the three of them were almost shocked and felt a little afraid. However, after knowing each other for so many years, the three of them were already quite familiar with Black Star's unfathomable habits. They were already used to Black Star placing spies everywhere. Perhaps this group of revivers that suddenly appeared was only the tip of the iceberg. The three of them retracted their gazes with heavy hearts. Now is not the time to care about such things, but the three of them still respected Han Xiao even more. Now that Black Star was on the same level as them, the three of them did not ask further when they saw that he did not want to explain. Furthermore, compared to the importance of Black Star himself, a group of revivers did not seem to be a big deal. With a transcendent like Han Xiao in front of them, the impact of this group of hidden revivers on the three of them was limited. Han Xiao naturally would not take the initiative to explain the origin of the Holy Covenant. Looking at the three of them with stern expressions, he could not help but smirk. Back then, hiding the strength of the Holy Covenant organization was to leave a way out for the association, so that the beyond grade as would be divided into two sides, one in the light and the other in the dark, guarding each other. He had originally planned to reveal the tip of the iceberg of the Holy Covenant at the right time to make the three universal civilizations hesitate, but his plan could not keep up with the changes. Now that he had stepped into the transcendent grade, his deterrence was comparable to the entire beyond grade A group. The trump card of the Holy Covenant revivers was not as important as before. However, it was still useful. It was not a bad thing to make the three universal civilizations fear him a little more. Han Xiao paid attention to the battle again. After watching for a while, he suddenly locked onto the secret Tree King and Claudia, who were fighting on the surveillance screen. His eyes flashed. My prey has appeared. Excuse me, the three of you. As soon as he finished speaking, the remote projection disappeared. Only then did the leaders of the three universal civilizations relax. They looked at each other and saw the fear in each other's eyes. Shallow layered dimensional battlefield, a certain battle zone. Bang! A rainbow-like magic flash pierced through the surging dark energy and landed on Claudia's body, leaving behind new wounds. The powerful annihilation power sent him flying all the way to the dark brown ground, smashing through hundreds of layers. Cough, cough. The cells in his body withered under the influence of the annihilation magic. Claudia quickly used his energy to stabilize his injuries. He then looked up at the enemy in the sky with a solemn expression. The secret Tree King was floating in the air, looking down at him from above. Forbidden spells were brewing around him, quickly taking shape and falling like a storm. Claudia gritted his teeth and suppressed his injuries. He controlled the dark energy to meet the attack, but after a moment of stalemate, he was sent flying again, and many new wounds appeared on his body. This Tree King is a little too strong. Claudia covered his wounds, his eyes flashing with shock. His judgment of the Tree King's strength came from the Lord's avatar of the subduing Tree King, the Heart Tree King, and the Fortitude Tree King. He had thought that even if he could not defeat this new Tree King, he would at least be able to hold on for a long time. However, Claudia did not expect this guy who called himself the Secret Tree King to be clearly stronger than the other three. He was a national pillar after all, but the other party beat him up like he was his younger brother. It was very easy for him. Of all the people he had fought before, only Black Star and Wernos could crush him so easily. If the other beyond grade A mages were ordinary magic cannons, then this Secret Tree King was a magic nuclear bomb. The strength, frequency, and speed of his casting far surpassed all the mages Claudia had ever seen. In the sky, the secret tree king stopped attacking and moved his fingers. He casually played with a magic ribbon and said casually, "You actually dared to challenge me to a duel. Should I say that your courage is commendable, or that you overestimate yourself? Unfortunately, only that mechanic or that esper has the qualifications to fight me. Your strength is a little weak. If this continues, you won't be able to arouse my interest in killing you." The only opponents that the secret tree king placed in his eyes were Han Xiao and Es God. Although Claudi's combat strength was not low, and his esper ability to control dark energy was quite sharp, it was not much of a threat to a supreme mage like him who controlled multidimensional energy. Feeling the other party's contempt, Claudi's face darkened. He silently gathered his energy and prepared to fight with all his might. However, at this moment, a spatial fluctuation appeared in their senses. The spatial wall in the distance opened up, and a figure hidden under a hooded black robe shuttled over. His robe fluttered in the wind, and the edges were like black flames. His entire body was brimming with the aura of a peak beyond grade, attracting their attention. "Who are you?" Claudi turned around. He did not know if he was an enemy or a friend, so he immediately raised his guard. "One of us." Oathkeeper glanced at him and then stared at the secret tree king, locking onto him with his aura. "Another one?" The secret tree king narrowed his eyes. "You're in cahoots with that group of unfamiliar reinforcements, right? You should be their leader. Interesting, you guys actually have a group of high-level combatants hidden. Heh, so what? The situation can't be salvaged. Sooner or later, we will destroy all your forces in the secondary dimensions." Through the mental network, he had already learned about the situation of the Holy Covenant revivers supporting the beyond grade as of the three universal civilizations. In the secret tree king's opinion, facing an opponent like the world tree, the three universal civilizations would feel immense pressure and should have gone all out long ago. However, even now, the other party was still holding back. It was truly unfathomable. Furthermore, with the secret tree king's personality, he was still a little unhappy about this. "What? Is our world tree not worthy of your full strength?" Ignoring the secret tree king, Oathkeeper communicated with Claudi's mind and sent a telepathic message. "Leave this to me. Go and help the others." "Can you do it? This tree king is very strong. It's best if we work together to deal with him." Claudi expressed his doubts. "This tree king is a mage. I can tell that his spells are enhanced in the secondary dimension world. I shouldn't be his match, but I only need to stall him. In this aspect, I'm more suitable than you. There's no need to waste your strength on him." Oathkeeper replied. Not long ago, the Expeditionary Army outpost was attacked, and Han Xiao finally informed the Holy Covenant organization to participate in the battle. Many Holy Covenant revivers had long been mentally prepared. They did not need to be mobilized and set off on their own. On one hand, it was for the sake of the Sanctum revival qualifications, and, on the other hand, it was because they were interdependent. Other than that, Han Xiao also asked the Holy Covenant to bring dimensional exile bullets, advanced life form energy chaos wave, interdimensional detection radar, and other special technologies to provide support. Oathkeeper had no choice but to do as he was told. As the Holy Covenant's troops had always been on standby, reinforcements arrived very quickly. Before Claudi could reply, the secret tree king suddenly attacked. All sorts of powerful forbidden spells were cast one after another, firing at the two of them indiscriminately. Bang! 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 Magic light flashed in the sky, beautiful and fatal. Oathkeeper and Claudi immediately reacted and moved around in the light curtain, dodging nonstop. On the other side, the secret tree king was multitasking. He quickly constructed spell models one after another and threw out forbidden spells while communicating with the ancestral tree king through the mental network. There's no sign of that mechanic in the frontline battlefield or the secondary dimension battlefield. He has that kind of sealing ability, so there's a high chance that he's targeting a tree king. Therefore, his target should be me. Maybe he's secretly observing. After I fight with these two opponents for a while, he should jump out and attack me. Hearing this, the ancestral tree king agreed in the mental network and said with a deep voice, "Your judgment is very reasonable. Continue to fight. As long as that mechanic is lured out, I will immediately descend and catch him off guard." Okay. The two of them quickly came up with a plan and prepared to use the secret tree king as bait to lure the snake out of its hole. The mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. Since Black Star was very likely targeting the secret tree king, the ancestral tree king also chose to launch an ambush. He had two main goals. The first was to find an opportunity to kill Black Star, and the second was to find a way to save the Heart Tree King. If he did not deal with Black Star, how could he unseal him? At the very least, he had to snatch the universal treasure of the person who sealed him. It was not that they valued the Heart Tree King that much. Even the subduing Tree King had used decisively to self-destruct twice to escape the fate of being sealed. Only the Heart Tree King had been hit. The ancestral Tree King only wanted to take back the sealed Tree King crown. Otherwise, there would always be a vacancy among the 5 Tree Kings, and they would not even be able to change people. With the addition of Oathkeeper, the two of them were finally in a stalemate with the secret Tree King. The three of them fought fiercely, chasing each other nonstop. The battlefield changed again and again. One moment, it was the abyss-like black-purple space. The next moment, it was the holy-like silver kingdom. The next moment, it was the prototype of a new dimension, and the next moment, it was the unstable secondary dimension. Without exception, it was shattered by the shock waves of the battle between the three of them, and batches of fleets were swallowed by the space storm. The three of them arrived at a dark dimension. Suddenly, the space wall in the distance opened, and a new figure entered the battlefield. It was Han Xiao. The secret Tree King noticed Han Xiao immediately forgot about the other two opponents. He stared at Han Xiao, his eyes filled with strong fighting spirit and killing intent. "You're finally willing to come out?" Han Xiao glanced at him and waved his hand to get Oathkeeper and Claudia to stop and retreat to the side. Only then did he speak to the secret Tree King in the public channel. "We have 3 people here. Aren't you going to run?" "Run? Who do you think I am?" The secret Tree King suddenly waved his hand, and an invisible spatial fluctuation swept across this space. The entire secondary dimension immediately turned into a mirror space, as if it was trapped in a crystal. The silhouettes of the battlefield flowed on the spatial facets, overlapping each other, dazzling one's eyes. A spatial barrier suddenly formed, isolating Claudia and Oathkeeper. They could only see what was happening inside the barrier, but they could not participate in it. It was as if the two of them were in parallel spaces with no intersection. Only the secret Tree King and Han Xiao were in the barrier, looking at each other from afar. "You want to fight me one-on-one?" Han Xiao glanced at the barrier and laughed strangely. "I've always wanted to fight you. Why should I run? I thought you would launch a sneak attack, but I didn't expect you to appear so openly. However, it doesn't matter. This barrier is our duel. If you have the ability, don't use that teleportation technique to escape. I'll definitely kill you today." The secret Tree King's eyes flickered. He knew that Black Star had teleportation techniques that could ignore control. So this barrier was only to prevent other enemies from disrupting the situation and creating the illusion of a one-on-one battle. As long as Black Star did not teleport away and stayed behind to fight him one-on-one, the plan would be half successful. He did not hesitate and immediately cast all kinds of spells. All kinds of spells with strange effects focused on Han Xiao. On the surface, it seemed like a one-on-one battle, but he had already secretly used spells to guide the ancestral Tree King into the barrier, preparing to launch a pincer attack. However, before the spell could hit the target, a strong high-level pressure swept out like a storm with Han Xiao as the center, causing the secret Tree King's mind to instinctively tremble. Boom! Countless machines surged out of the divine fortress and instantly condensed on Han Xiao's body, turning into a huge mechanical deity. It was the supreme heavenly venerate, and the energy fluctuations of a transcendent erupted without reservation. The secret Tree King's expression changed instantly, and the ferocity on his face turned into fear and disbelief. This is the level of a tree god? He was not mentally prepared at all. He was scared out of his wits. At this moment, all tactics and plans were thrown to the back of his mind. The Secret Tree King constructed a teleportation gate without hesitation and was about to escape. He no longer had any arrogance, only panic. However, Han Xiao was even faster than him. The huge mechanical body flashed and teleported behind the Secret Tree King. He reached out and tore apart the world tree roots around him. Then, the Emperor's Skysplitter blade slashed down, and an invisible psionic wave burst out like a blade wave. Crack! Crack! The sound of a mirror shattering could be heard. Within the range of the psionic wave, the spatial barrier, all kinds of forbidden spells, teleportation gates, and everything else constructed by magic power collapsed like a collapsing sandcastle. There was no resistance at all. What? The Ancestral Tree King, who had just teleported behind Han Xiao and was about to launch a sneak attack, froze on the spot, and his expression changed drastically. Chapter 1436. The Emperor's Skysplitter blade and the psionic wave emitter had already been strengthened by Han Xiao's transcending divine equipment to the divine equipment level. Just a single attack was no different from an ultimate move that could destroy the world. Facing the terrified gaze of the Secret Tree King, the Emperor's Skysplitter blade stabbed out. The huge blade rapidly enlarged in his eyes, and he could not react in time. Boom! The huge blade pressed against the Secret Tree King and suddenly pierced into the spatial wall of the secondary dimension, creating countless cracks like cracked porcelain. The power of this strike was transmitted to the entire secondary dimension, and it had already exceeded the upper limit of what it could withstand. The entire shadow space exploded, and all the darkness dissipated. Countless spatial storms flowed in reverse. However, the Secret Tree King was not sent flying. Instead, he was firmly stuck to the tip of the blade by the strong gravitational field. At the same time, the Supreme Heavenly Venerate extended a finger and pressed it against the Secret Tree King's body. The invisible power of the space-time amber flowed along his finger and started to make amber on the Secret Tree King's body. The soul link of the space-time amber had already reached the 5th level in the past 10 years. There is no need to use the amber itself to touch the target. One only needed to touch the target to activate the seal. This meant that the space-time amber did not need to be carried around anymore. It could be placed anywhere. At the same time, due to the energy base god of all machines, talent of the transcendent mechanic, his basic form of existence was not limited to his physical body. The mechanical deity that he fused with was also his main body. This meant that if he touched the target with the mechanical deity's body, he would also satisfy the judgment of the space-time amber. The Secret Tree King was fixed on the spot by a bunch of universal treasure-level control devices. The extremely lethal psionic waves rushed into his body along the blade, crushing large amounts of cells. The energy in his body was suppressed by the energy seal of the transcendent grade, and he could not even self-destruct. Furthermore, he did not dare to self-destruct in front of a transcendent. That was truly courting death. Black Star's speed was too fast, exceeding the beyond grade A level. He could not react much at all, as though he had fallen into such a state the moment he regained his senses. How can anyone break through this limit? This kind of power can't be grasped by a single individual. The Secret Tree King panicked, his face pale. He did not expect that a tree god-level super would appear in this civilization. It had only been more than 10 years. So how could there be such a huge change? The world tree had been growing for countless years. Other than the Ancestral Tree King, the other 4 Tree Kings had all changed positions. Although the Ancestral Tree King had the power to dismiss the other Tree Kings, he rarely used it. Generally speaking, unless the Tree King died, he would not change his candidate. However, the Tree Kings could revive, so why would they still die? That was the problem. Some Tree Kings had tried to break through to a higher level, but all of them died without exception. They thought that they could revive through the world tree, but after dying during their advancement, their information form would directly leave the connection of the world tree. They would not be able to revive and would die completely. After failing time and time again, with the precedent, basically no one tried to advance anymore. In their eyes, the transcendent area was a natural chasm that an individual could not cross. It was the limit of an individual life form. Only by using other methods could they temporarily step into a higher level. The descent of the tree god was one way. This idea was not strange. Having a powerful, extraordinary power system did not mean that one could become stronger endlessly. Although many civilizations like to confuse the difference between the two, these were two different concepts. Be it the world tree experts or the beyond grade, as of the three universal civilizations, they all had this common sense and also acknowledged the existence of individual limits. The difference was that the standards of individual strength were different. Until now, no one had discovered the true absolute limit, so there were different definitions. I have to break free from his control, or else. The Secret Tree King made up his mind and crazily activated the cell reactor. Ignoring the damage to his cells, he forcefully squeezed out all his magic power and fiercely attacked the energy seal. After struggling without caring about the consequences, he finally loosened the control field. There's still a chance to escape. The Secret Tree King was overjoyed. Just as he was about to accumulate his strength to burst out and break through Han Zhao's control, the Tree King power in his body suddenly flowed out like a flood and was sucked away by an invisible force. His body suddenly went limp, and his accumulation of strength was interrupted. A sense of weakness spread throughout his body. My Tree King crown. He suddenly raised his eyes and looked in the direction of the ancestral Tree King in shock. The ancestral Tree King's figure was already wrapped in a rapidly expanding green light. It was like a huge egg, and a huge figure was faintly discernible inside. The energy fluctuations were rising steadily. How could the Secret Tree King not recognize this scene? The ancestral Tree King had already activated the Tree God's descent, instantly taking back his Tree King crown and sucking away his power. It was obvious that he had abandoned him and decisively stopped his losses. Not only did he have no intention of saving him, he even destroyed his hope of escaping. No! The Secret Tree King's eyes widened in shock. Han Zhao sensed the change in the ancestral Tree King and turned around to take a look. His heart skipped a beat, and he looked down at the Secret Tree King. We agreed on a two-person world. I didn't expect you to secretly pull a third party. All right, sleep well. I'll play with him again. As soon as he said that, he suddenly moved his finger, and the space-time amber formed. Dang! The Secret Tree King's face was frozen in shock, as though he could not believe that he was taken down so easily. His entire body was frozen in the amber. Got it. Han Zhao's eyes lit up. The Secret Tree King was very strong among the beyond grade but he could not do anything in his hands. Although there was an element of surprise, the main reason was that the difference in strength was too huge. The Secret Tree King did not have the time to use any methods before dying. Compared to the various schemes he had used to seal the Heart Tree King, sealing an even stronger Secret Tree King this time was much easier. Although it was not as simple as not having a beyond grade, fighting a calamity grade, it was still a crushing victory. The next moment, a channel opened at the tip of the mechanical finger, and the Secret Tree King's amber was swallowed into its body. After doing this, Han Zhao officially turned around and faced the rapidly expanding green light of the ancestral Tree King, which was also emitting the pressure of a transcendent. Seeing this, Han Zhao's eyes flashed. He could roughly guess why the Secret Tree King fled so decisively and was so afraid of him. So that's how it is. The World Tree also has the power of a transcendent. The Secret Tree King doesn't have any fighting spirit because he has seen this power before. Maybe the transcendent grade of the World Tree has already unlocked the ability to kill information forms. Therefore, in his opinion, regardless of whether he self-destructs or not, I can directly attack him at the information form level and kill him completely. I can crack the mechanism of the World Tree and deprive him of his eternal life. That's why the secret tree king is so afraid of me. Han Xiaoxin calculated and immediately became vigilant. If that's the case, doesn't that mean that the transcendent grade of the world tree can also threaten me? Without another word, he fired at the green light. He did not have the habit of waiting for others to transform. At this moment, the green light suddenly exploded, and a huge tree palm with intertwined roots extended out from the strong light. Green light surged out from the palm and turned into a barrier, blocking the torrential firepower of the mechanical army. It did not budge even after enduring the continuous impact. It was indestructible. The figure of the ancestral tree king had already disappeared, and in its place was a huge tree-ant. Its entire body was glowing green, and countless world tree roots were wrapped around its body. It was as if it was a vine armor woven from the world tree roots. Many small roots grew out from various parts of its body like dancing snakes, tearing open spatial rifts and absorbing the matter and energy on the other end of the passage. What is this? Han Xiao glanced at the interface. The other party's name was Tree God, incomplete. A large amount of information was filled with question marks. Clearly, its overall level was higher, and its grade was transcendent. Interesting. The world tree still has such a method hidden. Why hasn't it used it before? Han Xiao frowned and started to have doubts. In the war in his previous life, the world tree had never used this method. Logically speaking, since its nest had been attacked, it should have used all its trump cards to stop the enemy. However, even when the three universal civilizations blew up the world tree's main body, the tree god had never descended. He had originally thought that the world tree did not have the individual strength of a transcendent, but now it seemed that this was not the case. There must be some secrets that he did not understand. At this moment, a mental signal came from the tree god. There was no clear content, only chaotic thoughts and strong thirst, like a hungry beast. Does this mean that it wants to eat me? Han Xiao could sense the meaning behind the tree god's words, and his heart skipped a beat. It seemed like this tree god's thoughts were very chaotic, and there was no rational leader. Before he could observe for a while, the tree god pounced forward and impatiently fought with the supreme heavenly venerate. Countless world tree roots wrapped up in green light and flung out time and time again, smashing toward Han Zhao's mechanical body. They were constantly cut off by the Emperor's Sky Splitter Blade, but new ones quickly grew out. A machine and a tree, two giant creatures fought in the space storm. Dozens of mechanical oracles led their troops to surround the tree god and fire. Every moment, countless attacks landed on the tree god's body. However, its HP seemed to be limitless. Not only did the body made of the world tree roots have extremely high resistance, but it also had extraordinary regeneration ability. Oathkeeper and Claudia had already dodged far away. The aftermath of the battle between the two transcendent grade powers was too terrifying, and they had no room to interfere. They could only follow behind and watch from afar. I didn't expect the world tree to have the strength of a transcendent. It's actually fighting evenly with Black Star. If they had used it earlier, Claudia's eyes widened in shock. Can't you tell? This transcendent doesn't seem to be an individual. The world tree civilization must have paid a price to create a transcendent. Oathkeeper shook his head and analyzed calmly. Furthermore, he's not evenly matched with Black Star. Look, he's already at a disadvantage. Due to the incomplete Tree King crown, the tree god's descent this time was not complete, and its combat strength did not reach its peak. After fighting for a while, the tree god gradually fell into a disadvantage under Han Zhao's fierce attacks. It only relied on its strong flesh to resist the attacks, attacking less and defending more and more. Han Xiao also felt the weakness of the tree god, and his heart skipped a beat. Although he's a transcendent, his combat strength doesn't seem to be enough. It should be because of the incomplete suffix. He's not the complete body of the tree god yet. Could this have something to do with me? Han Zhao's thoughts raced. Although he did not know the activation conditions of the tree god's descent, when he thought about how one of the requirements was to find supers of the other four classes as helpers when he advanced to the transcendent grade, he had a guess. The composition of the 5 tree kings is similar to the requirements for advancing to the transcendent grade. Could this be the birth condition of the tree god? If that's the case, I've sealed the heart tree king and the secret tree king, so the complete version of the tree god can't descend. Han Xiao felt that it was more and more possible, and he could not help but perk up. In that case, I've unintentionally weakened the other party's important trump card. Great. Let's see who dares to say that I'm unlucky in the future. I'm usually unlucky because I've never failed at critical moments. Chapter 1437. Rumble. The battle between the 2 transcendent grade powers became more and more intense. The battlefield moved quickly in the spatial storm, as if it had split into 2 balls of light, one black and one green. They were entangled with each other and crazily corroded each other's space. The rumbling of energy vibrations kept ringing out, bursting out with round after round of strong light, as if the world was about to be destroyed. Endless mechanical soldiers flew out of Han Zhao's godly fortress. From afar, they looked like wisps of black smoke released by the supreme heavenly venerate, turning into thousands of ribbons. Some were like whips, constantly fighting with the countless dancing world tree roots, while some released billions of rays, bombarding various parts of the tree god. Among them, there were dozens of dust-sized light spots jumping on the tree god's body alone, tearing apart roots one after another. They were the many mechanical oracles under Han Xiao. They had different abilities, and with the support of mechanical force, they had strength that far exceeded normal soldiers. They were all elite units. Under the endless stack of mechanical soldiers, the supreme heavenly venerate's body seemed to grow endlessly. On the other side, the speed at which the world tree roots condensed on the tree god's body grew faster and faster. Under the layers of entanglement, his body also grew rapidly. The 2 huge objects grew at the same time at a similar speed. Hiss, so big! Oathkeeper and Claudia looked at the 2 of them in surprise. The aftermath of the battle between the transcendent grade experts became more and more intense. In order not to be implicated, the 2 of them had already retreated even further. However, the bodies of Han Xiao and the tree god still occupied their entire field of vision. They could not even see their full appearance, as if it extended endlessly. At Oathkeeper and Claudia's level, they naturally did not have giant phobia. However, at this moment, looking at the 2 huge creatures that were emitting terrifying pressure with every move, they could not help but feel instinctive fear. It was an indescribable fear of existences that exceeded their understanding. A strong sense of danger lingered in the hearts of the 2 of them. The more they looked, the more unstable the energy in their bodies became. Their hearts felt like they were about to jump out of their throats. It was as if a transcendent was unleashing his full strength. To them, it was a scene that they could not even look straight at. Waves of horror rushed into their minds, making them want to look away. However, their eyes seemed to have left their bodies and were no longer under their control. Their gazes were firmly glued to the 2 transcendent grade experts. Shua. At this moment, the Emperor's sky-splitter blade that was burning with dark blue psionic energy tore apart a large space storm and stabbed into the tree god's body, piercing through it from front to back. However, the roots in the tree god's body quickly knotted and mended the wound like a needle. At the same time, tiny roots that looked like granulation grew out near the wound and intertwined with each other. In the blink of an eye, the wound was healed. In addition, a portion of the psionic energy covering the blade had been absorbed by the tree god's body. He also had the devouring characteristic of the world tree and would not reject any energy. At the same time, the slash mark left behind by the Emperor's sky-splitter blade and the space storms spread rapidly, turning into a gap in space, tearing open a passage to a certain secondary dimension. However, not only were the 2 of them not pulled in by the secondary dimension's gravitational force, but the anti-gravitational force on their bodies pulled the secondary dimension out. The internal matter gushed out along the space crack, sprinkling on the 2 of them and the battlefield. The scene was like a fruit with a hole in its skin that was being clenched tightly, trying to squeeze the juice and flesh out of the hole and turn into a messy mixture. Swish, swish, swish. Every slash of Han Zhao's would tear open a space crack that led to different secondary dimensions. Very soon, many colorful space tunnels appeared on the battlefield. Countless secondary dimensions spurted out, shooting out streams of matter. All kinds of strange things scattered all over the sky, including all kinds of strange creatures. They were crushed into powder by the aftershocks and merged into the energy storm of the two of them. Looking inside these space tunnels, one could see that these secondary dimensions were rapidly drying up, as if their bodies were being hollowed out. Such a battle had already exceeded the range of a Beyond Grade A's ability. Although the aftershocks of their battle could also shatter secondary dimensions, the Beyond Grade, as were the ones being sucked in by the secondary dimensions, destroying the secondary dimensions from the inside. As for the Transcendent Grade, with their own gravity, not only did they prevent the secondary dimensions from being sucked in, but they could also pull out the intestines of the secondary dimensions. The tree god had been resisting Han Zhao's attacks head-on. As its roots moved, the almost endless power of the world tree was released. It was like a rolling green wave, combining attack and defense with endless uses. It also infected this area, causing space to be dyed with a faint green light. Ding! Right at this moment, with the tree god as the center, a special spatial fluctuation was suddenly released. Then a layer of green world seemed to overlap with this area, spreading out an endless light green light and quickly completing its rooting. The next moment, Han Zhao suddenly felt a strong binding force. A portion of his strength was inexplicably suppressed. Not only did the supreme heavenly venerate slow down, but the power of all the mechanical troops also decreased. The power of the tree god rose in reverse, and it could freely teleport through this area. Its mobility immediately increased. It seems to be a dimensional projection. With a glance, Han Zhao recognized what this green world shadow was, and his heart skipped a beat. The Transcendent Grade had already formed an inner space and an inner universe in his body. A second void dimension was born in his body, and the tree god should also have an inner dimension in his body. The scene before him should be opening up his inner space and summoning a dimensional projection to descend, turning a certain area outside his body into an inner dimension environment and forming his own domain. This way, he could obtain the home field advantage, improve himself, and suppress his opponent. Furthermore, this domain moved with him. Even if the battlefield kept changing, it would not be affected. Han Xiaoxin moved his head, connecting with the void dimension consciousness in his body. He followed suit and summoned an inner space projection. A gray domain shining with blue lightning immediately spun and opened up, squeezing away the tree god's green domain. The negative effects of the tree god's domain immediately disappeared. Not only did Han Xiao return to normal, but he also felt the huge increase brought about by the domain. Furthermore, the domain around him moved according to his will, like a new sensory organ. In the spatial storm, grayish blue and green corroded each other. The void domain and the tree god's domain were clearly separated. Before Han Xiao could savor it, he felt the pressure on his domain and could not help but increase his energy input. Buzz! The void domain immediately expanded outward, squeezing the tree god's domain until it was smaller. At the same time, Han Xiao keenly sensed that the increase in his domain had become stronger, while the tree god's domain had become weaker. So this is the normal style of a transcendence battle. Han Zhao's eyes flashed with a hint of joy. All these years, he had been exploring the power of the Transcendent Grade by himself. Although he had some gains, he did not have an opponent of the same level or someone to learn from. Although the tree god was not complete, he was still quite familiar with the use of Transcendent Grade methods. It was enough to give him a lot of inspiration and imitate the other party's techniques. Just fighting with a Transcendent who knew the ropes would bring him a lot of benefits. Han Xiaoxin activated virtual creation, and the materials in the Divine Fortress were consumed rapidly. In the blink of an eye, a huge live cannon appear behind him. Its caliber was almost the size of an asteroid, and the muzzle was as deep as a pitch-black abyss. A cannon of this size was already considered a galactic giant project. It would take a lot of time to build it, but with virtual creation, pseudo, it could be built in an instant, and the efficiency was countless times higher. From Han Zhao's point of view, the biggest characteristic of this ability in battle was to adapt to the situation and create different devices that he needed on the spot according to the situation on the battlefield. It did not matter even if he was not prepared beforehand. No matter how strong a mechanic was, he would not dare to say that he could adapt to all situations. For example, he would not build a live cannon of this size for nothing. Now that he realized that the tree god's energy resistance was a little abnormal, he could use the virtual creation to create it. It was convenient and fast. Other than the fact that the materials would not be returned after the temporary creation disappeared, there were basically no flaws. Surging energy accumulated in the barrel of the cannon, and a strong light flashed. A giant bullet the size of a planet shot out with a loud bang, smashing into the tree god's chest and abdomen with a huge amount of kinetic energy. It was deeply embedded in, and large pieces of broken roots danced in the air. The next moment, the strong light almost blinded Oathkeeper and Claudi's eyes. They saw the bullet explode, instantly blasting the tree god into two. Countless bomb fragments with magnetic acceleration shot out, cutting the two halves of the tree god's body out of shape, riddling it with holes. Han Zhao was about to give chase, but at this moment, the tree god's body suddenly shrank rapidly, fusing into a world tree root and disappearing on the spot. We're only halfway through the fight. Why did it run away? Han Zhao had shattered this world tree root, but he did not sense the tree god's energy. At the same time, the other party's domain also disappeared, and he immediately understood. The tree god's domain was equivalent to the rooted area of the world tree, so it was connected to the world tree's territory. This meant that the tree god could teleport back to any corner of its hometown from anywhere. From his point of view, it was very similar to the teleportation of a king. Not only is it meat, but it can also run so fast. TSK, it must be imitating me. Han Xiaoxi knew that the tree god had been chased away by him and shook his head. The main reason was that the appearance of the tree god was a little sudden for him, and he was not prepared. However, after sealing the secret tree king, he had already completed the goal of this trip. Furthermore, he had accidentally revealed another trump card of the world tree, so he did not lose out. Furthermore, with the tree god's tankiness, he probably would not be able to kill this guy before he grasped the killing power of the information form. However, speaking of which, why didn't this tree god attack him at the information form level just now? Was there some condition to use it? Or was it that the incomplete version of the tree god could not use this move? Although this tree god doesn't seem to be my match, it seems to have the ability to kill information forms. I need to be careful. Furthermore, after this battle, my combat strength has been exposed. I don't know how the world tree will react. I have to think about it carefully. Han Xiao pondered. He calmed himself down and opened the interface to take a look. His expression was a little strange. However, I didn't expect that a mission could be triggered like this. I thought that the highest challenge mission would be to a beyond grade A super. After all, it's understandable to challenge a beyond grade A super, but to let players challenge a transcendent. Is it so strange? There's no success rate at all, and it actually triggered a mission. At this moment, Oathkeeper and Claudi finally relaxed their tense bodies. Their hands and feet were cold, and their hearts were still beating violently. Although the battle was already over, the terrifying pressure from the two transcendent grade supers had already been deeply imprinted in their memories. It was like the helplessness of an ordinary person riding a small boat in a storm. That indescribable terror that came from their instincts still lingered in their hearts, leaving a deep impression that could not be erased. I didn't expect that even a super of my level would be so afraid. The difference in life levels is too great. Is this the transcendent grade? Oathkeeper wiped his non-existent cold sweat. At this moment, he suddenly felt that being an underling was not bad. Chapter 1438. Now that the Halos were not around, it was not a good time to complete the mission. Han Xiao closed the interface and turned to look at Oathkeeper and Claudia. Do you guys have nothing to do? Is the war over? Has the enemy been defeated? No. Oathkeeper and Claudia came back to their senses. They suppressed their fear of Han Xiao and shook their heads. Then what are you guys waiting for? Go and deal with the enemy. I'll go now. Without another word, Oathkeeper stepped into the spatial rift and found a shallow dimensional battlefield to join. Claudia took a deep look at Han Xiao before disappearing. The battle between the two transcendent grade supers in the spatial storm was not monitored by the three universal civilizations, but he remembered it all. Be it Black Star's terrifying combat strength or the World Tree's transcendent trump card, this important information had to be reported to the upper echelons. Han Xiao did not retract his troops. He only shrunk the size of the supreme heavenly venerate and tore open a spatial rift that led to a battlefield. Then, he controlled the mechanical deity to walk in. The battleships in the sky were shooting at each other. The battle was very intense, and the three universal civilizations' troops were in a critical situation. Less than 30% of them were left, and they were being surrounded and annihilated. When the blessed race of the World Tree saw a mechanical deity with black clouds all over its body descend, they immediately changed the direction of their attacks and rained down cannon fire. The supreme heavenly venerate did not move. The mechanical soldiers that had condensed into black clouds around him immediately split up and blocked in front of him. At the same time, they activated their shields, and their energy connected together, forming a huge psionic shield that protected the entire supreme heavenly venerate. All the fleet's cannon fire was blocked, and the surface of the shield was covered in light and ripples. Han Xiao raised the Emperor's Skysplitter blade and pointed it at the large World Tree fleet that filled the sky. He twisted his arm slightly, causing the blade to spin half a circle. The next moment, an invisible psionic wave spread out from the tip of the sword and quickly swept out, enveloping more than half of the fleet. The next moment, countless battleships flashed with electric sparks at the same time, and their shields shattered and disappeared. All of them malfunctioned and fell in different directions as if they had lost power. Wherever the psionic waves passed, battleships fell like rain. Now that Han Xiao was dealing with a large number of troops, there was no longer a need for him to use the human wave tactic. Psionic waves were a great killing weapon in group battles, and they were finally being used on an official battlefield today. In the face of this technology, the number of fleets was almost meaningless. This black technology is even more useful than I expected. It was worth it for me to strengthen you into a divine artifact. Han Xiao couldn't help but feel elated as he looked at the spectacular scene of the spaceships falling from the sky. This time, he had revealed his strength in order to seal the secret Tree King. Now that there was no need to continue hiding, he naturally chose to participate in the battle. Hegemin, there are too many battlefields. You can't do anything by yourself. Should we join in? Psionic Prime stood on the shoulder of the supreme heavenly venerate with his mechanical oracles and asked respectfully, "Bring the boys to help." Han Xiao nodded. As soon as he said that, the dozens of mechanical oracles immediately took action. They each brought a batch of mechanical troops and headed to different shallow dimensional battlefields to support the three universal civilizations and suppress the invading World Tree-blessed race. With the enhancement of Han Zhao's mechanical force, the combat strength of the mechanical army was extraordinary, and it increased by leaps and bounds. The mechanical army entered the battlefield one after another, immediately giving the various World Tree-blessed race a head-on blow. Han Xiao controlled the supreme heavenly venerate to move alone. The enormous mechanical life form that could pierce through the heavens and earth strolled through the dimensional battlefields one after another. He casually waved the Emperor's Skysplitter blade, a huge double-headed broadsword, and kept activating AoE attacks. Psionic waves slashed out like blades of light, sweeping across the world tree fleet. After fighting for an unknown period of time, Han Xiao could not remember how many World Tree blessed race members he had destroyed. Suddenly, in the remaining shallow dimensional battlefields, the World Tree fleet stopped firing at the same time and retreated like the tide. They had wanted to end the battle quickly, but they had kicked an iron plate. Seeing that things were not going to work, the World Tree blessed race finally gave up on the invasion and chose to retreat. We finally repelled the World Tree's attack. In the conference room of the leaders of the main universe, the leaders of the three universal civilizations looked at the scene of the World Tree army retreating and finally relaxed their tense minds. It wasn't easy for the World Tree to find an opportunity to open a second front. They won't give up so easily. After resting for a while, they might make a comeback, Lewis pondered. The ethereal Pope nodded and said with a worried tone, "The opening of the second front is very disadvantageous for us. The secondary dimension battlefield is a meat grinder that is even more terrifying than the main universe border. It's mainly a head-on clash, and the losses will not be low. Their fleet is endless, but our losses are real." Although the underworld can contain most of the hero spirits of the dead, Aurora's energy level can't bear the losses of the soldiers on the galactic battlefield. Mar Bruce clasped his hands and suddenly said, "It's not a big problem. The enemy has an army, and we have Black Star?" Hearing this, the other two had complicated expressions. They had only known the true strength of a transcendent after receiving Claudia's report. They had already tried their best to raise their expectations, but they did not expect to still underestimate Han Zhao's strength. "Sai, the strength of a transcendent is really shocking. However, I didn't expect the World Tree to also have a transcendent," the ethereal Pope said in surprise. "Fortunately, Black Star has stepped into the transcendent grade. Otherwise, I'm afraid no one on our side would be able to counter the World Tree's trump card. We would definitely suffer heavy casualties." The three of them had complicated feelings and some lingering fear. The transcendent grade Black Star made them extremely afraid, but it also gave them a sense of security. If Black Star had not broken through this limit, the Galactic Society would have been at an absolute disadvantage in terms of individual strength. Once the tree god descended, they would definitely have been destroyed and would not have been able to counterattack. The current battle situation was barely stable, and at least half of it was due to Black Star's contribution. His contribution was greater than the three of them combined. However, after this battle, the World Tree should have been frightened by Black Star. The next time it attacks the shallow dimension, it will most likely think twice before making any plans. The three of them nodded and heaved a sigh of relief. World Tree Territory, Tree King Palace. Specks of green light gathered on the throne and condensed into the bodies of the Ancestral Tree King and the Fortitude Tree King. Both of them had ugly expressions, not only because the Secret Tree King was sealed, but also because of the aftereffects of removing the tree god's descent. The Secret Tree King is gone too. I didn't expect that mechanic, who was still a peak beyond grade more than 10 years ago, to have actually stepped into the Transcendent grade. The Ancestral Tree King rubbed his forehead to ease the tearing pain in his soul. He spoke hoarsely with a rare tone of shock and anger. When Black Star revealed his true strength and instantly killed the Secret Tree King, he was shocked. He knew that the Secret Tree King was most likely dead, so he decisively gave up on the Secret Tree King and activated the Tree God's Descent without hesitation. The Tree God's Descent was like mixing the bodies and souls of the 5 Tree Kings together. It was extremely painful, forming a new subconsciousness that fused with the will of the Mother Tree. The aftereffects were very serious. After disintegrating, the Tree King would have problems recognizing his identity from time to time. His thoughts would be in chaos for a long time before he could slowly recover. If not for the fact that he had no other choice, the Ancestral Tree King would not have used it. It was not that he wanted to compete with Black Star, but he was worried that if he did not summon the Tree God, he would not be able to escape from Black Star's hands and follow in the footsteps of the Secret Tree King. In addition, every time the Tree God's Descent was used, it would severely overdraft the Tree King crown, causing the power of the Tree King to decrease. It would take time to recover, and before the Tree King crown completely returned to its peak, it would be the usual cool-down period of the Tree God's descent. If the Tree God's descent was used continuously, after 3 times, the Tree King crown would shatter and disappear. It would take thousands of years for it to be regenerated, which meant that during this period, the Tree King would no longer have any special bonuses and would only be a pure title. Furthermore, the Tree God's descent also required a special fuel. It was a material called the King's Relic. When a Tree King failed to advance to the transcendent grade and died, this special material would be produced. The mother tree could not convert it and could only store it. Although it had accumulated over the years, there were fewer and fewer Tree Kings who chose to advance. Every time the King's Relic was used, there would be one less. And only the ancestral Tree King knew about this. As the oldest Tree King, the ancestral Tree King also knew another secret. Currently, if any member of the World Tree chose to advance to the Transcendent grade, they would definitely die. This had nothing to do with talent, but the restrictions of the Mother Tree. In the beginning, the Mother Tree was not as strong as it was now. It had only grown to its current state after devouring countless things through the feedback of the civilization. Only by devouring a new thing and possessing the information form of this thing would the World Tree be able to unlock the corresponding ability. And the World Tree had never devoured a transcendent grade life form, so beyond grade A was the limit of the World Tree supers. However, this did not mean that the members of the World Tree could not advance. In fact, as long as a Tree King stepped into the transcendent grade, they would be able to take back the information form that was devoured by the Mother Tree and break free from the World Tree, becoming completely free. However, the World Tree did not allow any member to escape its control. As long as someone tried to advance, not only would the Mother Tree not protect them, it would also automatically interfere. This was because everyone's information form was under its control, and it could easily trigger a vicious mutation. Therefore, in terms of performance, they would never reach the Transcendent grade. All the advanced Tree Kings died and turned into the King's Relic, which was the Beyonder's vestige, and were stored in the World Tree. Therefore, after the Tree God descended, the Mother Trees will had a strong appetite and could not wait to eat Black Star. As long as it devoured this true Transcendent grade life form, it would be able to obtain the information form of the Transcendent grade and unlock the upper limit of its individual strength. Infinite resurrection naturally came with a price. Their upper limit was stuck. Only when the World Tree grew would their upper limit be able to increase at the same time. However, other than the Ancestral Tree King, no one knew about this. The Ancestral Tree King never chose to advance because he did not want to benefit others. Furthermore, he kept this secret and did not tell the subsequent Tree Kings. All sorts of thoughts flashed through his mind as the Ancestral Tree King spoke with a deep voice. The timing of that mechanic's advancement is too coincidental. Luck is not on our side. Fortunately, I took back the Tree King crown of the secret Tree King at the critical moment. Otherwise, the power of the Tree God would have declined further. The secret Tree King is hopeless. Who are you going to let inherit this crown? The Fortitude Tree King held his head in pain and asked. Let's observe again. The Ancestral Tree King's expression was solemn as he scanned the 3 empty thrones. He was in extremely bad mood. Of the 5 great Tree Kings, 1 was dead and 2 were sealed. Only the 2 of them were left. When had they ever been in such a sorry state in the process of conquering the universe? It was simply miserable, 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 miserable. Furthermore, the one who stayed behind to accompany him was the most annoying Fortitude Tree King. The Ancestral Tree King felt tired. The one he wanted to get rid of the most was the Fortitude Tree King. It was not only because this guy liked to slack off, but also because he suspected that the Fortitude Tree King might have guessed something, which was why he was so lazy. The Fortitude Tree King did not notice the Ancestral Tree King's gaze and said worriedly, "The Tree God's descent is not complete, and we are not a match for that mechanic. We are completely suppressed in terms of individual strength. What should we do in the future? We can only temporarily give up on the battle of individual strength. Don't let the high-level combatants take action anymore. Otherwise, all of them will be sealed. Furthermore, I'm afraid we won't be able to save the Heart Tree King. That Tree King crown might be lost forever. The Ancestral Tree King was depressed. The Fortitude Tree King said worriedly, "What about the Mother Tree's natural enemy?" This is a ticking time bomb. I still have to think of a way. The Ancestral Tree King's eyes darkened. The World Tree was originally very calm about this war. It was not in a hurry and was fearless. However, the appearance of the pivotal snake had hit their vitals, causing their great situation to become precarious. They had no choice but to race against time and drag them into the quagmire. If it was just the coordinates of the Mother Tree's main body being exposed, the Ancestral Tree King would not have panicked. He had always emphasized that the main body could not be moved, but in fact the main body of the Mother Tree was not fixed. Although the process of moving it was very troublesome, it could indeed be transplanted to other secondary dimensions. The reason why he had revealed false information was to leave a way out and act as a trap. However, until today, no civilization had forced him to use this trump card, so the Ancestral Tree King had kept it a secret until now. However, the adult pivotal snake could sense the location of the Mother Tree's main body at any time. It was equivalent to a positioning radar with infinite distance. No matter how hard he tried to transplant the main body, it would be useless. This was a huge matter regarding the survival of a civilization, so the Ancestral Tree King had to take it seriously. However, even if the World Tree could sense its natural enemy, the pivotal snake was protected by that mechanic. They had almost no chance. This was the greatest threat. After thinking about it, he was still at a loss. The only way he could think of to break out of this situation was to quickly destroy the three universal civilizations, regardless of the casualties. This way, even if Black Star had the pivotal snake, it would be difficult for him to gather enough strength to attack the Mother Tree's main body. Even so, it's only a temporary solution. That mechanic will forever be a threat to the Mother Tree. If there are no variables, I'm afraid. The Ancestral Tree King clenched his fists. A layer of haze covered his heart, and his expression was uncertain. Chapter 1439. The blessed race of the World Tree had lost in the secondary dimension battlefield, and the army that was fighting at the front line of the flickering world also stopped their attacks and temporarily retreated. Compared to the danger of the shallow dimension war, the defense circle of the flickering world border guards was impregnable. In this wave of attacks, many shallow dimensions were riddled with holes. Although the enemy was repelled, because the battlefield was in the area controlled by the three universal civilizations, the damage was not small. A portion of the territory was destroyed, and the three universal civilizations' fleets quickly cleaned up the battlefield and repaired various war facilities. Han Shao retracted his divine ability and left a portion of his mechanical army to help clean up the battlefield. He then used his remote projection to meet the leaders of the three universal civilizations. The moment Han Shao arrived, he heard a wave of flattery. "Black Star, thank you for your hard work. Fortunately, we defeated the blessed race of the World Tree. If the enemy destroyed our territory in the secondary dimension, we would have been in a passive position and would have definitely implicated the front line of the main universe. It's all thanks to you this time. You've contributed a lot, and we thank you on behalf of the entire galactic society. I didn't expect the World Tree to have transcendent grade combat strength, but it's still not as good as you. We didn't trust the wrong person." Han Shao raised his brows and looked at the three of them. They had friendly smiles on their faces, and their attitudes were even friendlier than before. All right, stop bragging." Han Shao did not feel anything. He knew the three of them too well. They were just afraid of his transcendent grade strength, so he was not stingy with his compliments. Hearing this, the three of them stopped talking. Mara Bruce asked curiously, "How do you feel after fighting with the World Tree Transcendent? Do you feel any pressure?" Han Shao shook his head. The world tree's transcendent grade combat strength is called the tree god. It doesn't seem to be a single life form. It might be an individual created through some kind of fusion. I realize that its combat strength doesn't seem to be at its peak. I guess the tree god's bad condition is related to the absence of the two sealed tree kings. He gave a brief explanation of his findings. In that case, it was a good move for you to seal the Heart Tree King back then. You had foresight, Lewis praised. Han Shao waved his hand. Don't be too happy. Although I can deal with the tree god, it's very difficult to kill him. His regenerative ability is as amazing as mine, and he can return to the world tree at any time. He's as agile as me. No way, wouldn't that be as disgusting as you? Ahem, I mean troublesome. Bruce quickly coughed and changed his words. He almost said what was on his mind. Han Shao rolled his eyes at him. He cannot be bothered to argue with him. In short, the tree god is not easy to deal with. However, I feel that this ability may not be used casually. There should be a price. Otherwise, they will have used the tree god to kill everyone more than 10 years ago. The three of them nodded and looked at each other. They seemed to have reached a consensus. Black Star, we have an idea, or perhaps a request. We hope that you can temporarily guard the secondary dimension alone. Han Shao raised his eyebrows. You mean that other than the fleet, I'm the only high-level combatant guarding the entire shallow layer dimension? No matter how many beyond grade as the world tree sends out, I'll deal with them alone? With your ability, you alone are equivalent to dozens or hundreds of beyond grade as. There's no need for the other combatants to stay here. We believe in your ability. You can definitely guard the secondary dimension battlefront alone. Bruce's tone was serious, and his words revealed the meaning of we think highly of you. Han Shao curled his lips. If I didn't know that you guys don't dare to fight among yourselves now, I would have thought that you guys were trying to trick me. You must have misunderstood us. We're not that kind of person. The three of them looked helpless. I think you guys have a misunderstanding about your image. When did you guys become humans? Han Shao complained, shrugged, and said casually, he spread his hands and casually said, all right, since you guys want me to guard the secondary dimension alone, I'll guard it alone. It's not difficult anyway. Because the world tree's main body was rooted in the secondary dimension, this was definitely the main battlefield to resist foreign enemies. Han Shao had originally planned to wait for the opportunity here. At this moment, Han Shao suddenly thought of something. His tone sank slightly as he said seriously, speaking of which, the time when the world tree discovered the expeditionary army outpost is a little coincidental. It happened not long after the pivotal snake appeared. I suspect that the two are related. Hearing this, the three of them perked up. What are your guesses? Share them. I've told you guys about the ability of the pivotal snake. After it reaches adulthood, it can track the location of the world tree's main body. Therefore, I suspect that there's a two-way connection between the world tree and it. With the maturity of the world tree, it might be able to sense the location of the pivotal snake in reverse. Therefore, the outpost was exposed. Then what do you plan to do? The three of them were slightly shocked. Since I'm guarding the secondary dimension, I can protect the key trump card, the pivotal snake, and bring it with me. No matter how the world tree attacks, it will have to pass through me first. Han Shao paused for a moment before continuing. As for how to prove this, it will depend on what the world tree does in the future. If they have information on the pivotal snake, then they will know that they are in a passive position. They will definitely increase their attacks like crazy, not caring about the losses, just a race for time. There is no need for them to do this just because I've revealed my transcendent strength. Therefore, once the world tree shows such signs, it means that my guess is almost correct. Reliable. Since you have a plan, let's do as you say. The three of them relaxed and expressed their trust. After discussing the follow-up plan for a while, Han Shao deactivated the projection and returned to the room. He first wanted to check on the condition of the pivotal snake. The pivotal snake was not involved in the battle and was still the same as before, ignoring him. As for the realmless king, who had already changed from a garbage station manager to a breeder, his attitude was even more respectful, indicating that he would definitely play with the snake seriously. Leaving behind more mechanical oracles to protect the pivotal snake, Han Xiao changed into the king and teleported back to the main universe, arriving at the Siebert Fortress at the border of the flickering world. He found a group of mascots with ease, and without saying a word, he started a combo of coiling dragon-touching ding without any explanation. After rubbing off enough luck, Han Xiao closed the door and opened the interface to settle the Tree Gods Challenge mission. 877 Good Book Network. The mission format was the same as the Beyond Grade A Challenge mission. The duration was the evaluation standard, but the rewards were many times higher. After the two of them fought for a long time, they had already unlocked all the rewards. The accumulated experience had already replaced the End of Darkness as the mission with the highest experience he had ever seen. It was a total of 24,000 megabytes, more than double. In other words, it was equivalent to more than 20 old mini-men. The other rewards were also refreshed. You have received Character Summon Card, Tree God, Incomplete. Character Summon Card, Tree God, Incomplete. World Tree Devour. Devours external matter or energy and converts it into the power of the world tree to replenish its own consumption. You can also summon the roots of the world tree at will. Usage limit, 0/4 recovery ability. Average. However, I use this character summon card. Am I devouring things myself, or helping the world tree devour things? Han Xiao scratched his head. When he was fighting with the tree god, if he used this move to summon the roots of the world tree, would the roots listen to him or the other side? Furthermore, if the world tree saw that he could also summon the roots of the world tree, would it think that he was its half-brother? You have received Draw one of the tree god's abilities, talent. Upgrade. The tree god is a special life form. Some of the available abilities have been adjusted. Randomizing. Randomizing complete. Please choose one of the following 5 abilities as the reward. 1. Tree King Crown. Liberation. Ability. Fusing with the Tree King Crown will allow you to summon the tree god. When you further liberate the power of a certain Tree King Crown, the energy level of the tree god will continue to increase. The price is that the Tree King Crown will be destroyed. 3. Mental Network, World Tree. Ability. Enter the symbiotic mental network of the World Tree and communicate with any World Tree life form without distance or delay. 4. Internal Space Strengthening. Talent. Your internal space domain is more sturdy and difficult to break. 5. Information Form Obliteration. Talent. You can ignore the limitations of space and chain damage the other party's information form foundation, causing damage. At the same time, individual memories, network data, written records, and other types of information carriers will also be affected. Han Xiao took a deep breath, and his heart trembled. As expected, the Transcendent Grade has the ability to kill information forms. It can target those of the same level. He browsed through it a few times and roughly understood the mechanism of information form obliteration. To put it simply, it was to eliminate all traces of the other party's existence in the world. Not only would everyone forget about him, but even the network data and written records would disappear. It was specially used to counter information uniqueness, conceptual immortality. It was quite similar to the information form of some of Destiny's Child's information form bodies. It cannot be observed or transmitted. As for the abilities of the World Tree Revival and the Underworld Hero Spirit, there was a high chance that they would be directly broken, and those who were hit would die completely. As for the Special Sanctum Revival, he did not know if it would be affected. However, this talent was not casually used. It needed to be judged, and one of the most important factors was the target state. Even if the difference in strength was huge, as long as the target had the ability to resist, information form obliteration would not be effective. The simplest trigger condition was that the target was in a state with the concept of death, such as being on the verge of death or just dying, or being directly killed by the user. This would trigger the effect. Han Xiao also understood that this was the reason why the Secret Tree King did not dare to self-destruct. Self-destructing in front of him was equivalent to giving up resistance and exposing his belly. It was just that this guy did not expect that he had not grasped this ability before. I didn't know this move, but you guys personally sent this ability to me. Thank you. Han Xiao laughed. After thinking for a while, he finally made up his mind to choose information form obliteration. Perhaps he would be able to unlock this move after reaching the transcendent grade, but he had no clue at the moment. Who knew what conditions he would need to comprehend it? Han Xiao had always believed that benefits were only meaningful, and this ability was the trump card that he urgently needed in the current battle. It was most suitable for the current situation. Furthermore, he had a hidden worry. In his previous life, when he blew up the World Tree's main body, Han Xiao had always thought that the three universal civilizations had won. However, now that he saw that the tree god had information uniqueness, conceptual immortality, would it also work on the World Tree's main body? Then, was the victory of the three universal civilizations in his previous life permanent or temporary peace? Was the World Tree really gone, or had it been reborn somewhere? Even if the possibility of such a guess was not high, Han Xiao still felt that he needed to get the information form obliteration as soon as possible as insurance. It was better to be safe than sorry. You have obtained a new talent, information form obliteration. The next moment, a mysterious feeling welled up in his heart. Han Xiaoxin sensed it and turned his head to look at the metal table beside him. His vision changed. He seemed to be able to see fine threads extending from the table, penetrating the wall, and stretching into the endless distance. Following these threads, he seemed to be able to see all the information carriers related to the table. He seemed to be able to see the source of the table's material, where it was processed, where it was assembled, how it was transported here, and how many people had come in contact with it. However, when he wanted to take a closer look, these images disappeared, as if they were just an illusion. Interesting. Han Xiao looked around the room. Many threads extended from the objects, representing their connection to various information carriers. He had a feeling that he could cut these threads. I can only see the connection, but I can't see the specific situation. If this ability is improved further, wouldn't I know everything? Could this be the development path of the transcendent grade? Han Zhao's eyes sparkled. Suddenly, he had an idea. He opened the interface, wanting to see the information connection on the interface, but there were only two threads. One was connected to him, and the other extended out infinitely. He did not know what it was connected to. Han Xiao narrowed his eyes and suddenly had a bold idea. What will happen if I cut this? Forget it. Let's not cause trouble for now. Chapter 1440. Han Xiao shook his head and retracted the vision of information form obliteration. The abilities he had drawn this time were not bad. The tree god was ranked third on the good person list in his heart, and the second was the germinal organization leader. The first place belonged to Manison, who is unshakable and forever a god. Speaking of which, there are still many good things on the tree god. If only I could draw a few more times. However, the World Tree probably won't use this move on me so easily again. I feel like the chances aren't high. Han Xiao stroked his chin and pondered. This time, he had also seen a part of the tree god's background from the options. Among them, Tree King Crown Liberation confirmed his guess. The tree god was indeed the product of the fusion of the various tree kings. It seemed to have a huge consumption. Now that he had beaten the tree god away, the possibility of the other party using this move against him was not high. However, based on the current situation, the three universal civilizations have already taken the initiative. They're the ones sitting on pins and needles now. Han Xiaoxin smiled. The current situation was very good, much more comfortable than in his previous life. Most of it came from his efforts. The entire galactic society is under my control. At this moment, black flames appeared in front of him and quickly condensed into Oathkeeper's mental projection. Your Excellency Black Star, the three universal civilizations are cleaning up the battlefield. Our Holy Covenant organization has already taken the opportunity to retreat and has not had much interaction. What instructions do you have for the next step? Han Xiao glanced at him and saw how submissive Oathkeeper was. He could not help but laugh. Your attitude changed very quickly. Are you afraid after seeing my heroic appearance? Oathkeeper's eyes twitched but he did not say anything. It was impossible to admit it, not in this lifetime. Seeing that he did not answer, Han Xiao clicked his tongue and said, "Don't be so reserved. I still like your unruly look. Stop joking. All right, I won't tease you anymore." Han Xiao smiled. Then his expression turned serious. He pondered and said, "The Holy Covenant has been exposed to the world this time, but I don't plan to let you guys come out. In short, continue to return to the shadows. Without my call, you don't need to take the initiative to participate in the battle, and don't interact too much with the three universal civilizations. It's best if all contact is conveyed through me." How are we going to explain this to the association? They will definitely ask when this batch of revivers appeared. If you keep hiding it, it might make them suspicious. Oathkeeper said, "You don't have to worry about that. I'll explain it to you while keeping the details of the Holy Covenant a secret." Han Xiao waved his hand. "All right." Oathkeeper nodded. "By the way, there's one more thing. The members of the Holy Covenant don't have to do anything, but you have to contribute your secondary dimension technology, such as the dimensional exile bullet, energy disruption wave, and so on, to be used in battle." "All right, I'll listen to you." Oathkeeper had already been worn down by Han Xiao, so he agreed expressionlessly. At the same time, the Supercluster Alliance was holding a meeting. The leaders of the various civilizations had complicated expressions. Some were happy, and some were worried. The three universal civilizations repelled the World Tree's secondary dimension invasion. How ferocious! At this rate, the three universal civilizations will be able to firmly stop the enemy outside the explored universe. The situation won't be chaotic. If that's the case, we won't be able to carry out the plan. The leaders of the civilizations did not know what to say. The original plan of the Superstar Cluster Alliance was that while the three universal civilizations were busy fighting the World Tree civilization, they would take advantage of the fact that the three universal civilizations were too busy to take the entire civilization out of the explored universe and escape from the three universal civilizations' territory. However, from the looks of it, the three universal civilizations were not in a tough battle at all. They were clearly very stable. It was all Black Star's fault. He was too ferocious and did not give them a chance to carry out their plan. The plan to leave the explored universe is one of the few chances for us to obtain free space to develop. Let's continue to wait and see. I hope the World Tree is more reliable." The Star Arc leader sighed helplessly. This plan was very important to the Supercluster Alliance. Even if the current situation was not good, they would not give up easily. However, it was inevitable that they would feel depressed. This time, a civilization leader narrowed his eyes and said in a low voice, "Maybe we can help the World Tree." However, before he could finish, the Star Arc leader glared at him and scolded, "Don't drag us down if you want to die. If we're found out, we're dead meat." He could not believe that someone would make such a suicidal suggestion. Was he tired of living? No matter how much they hoped that the World Tree would disrupt the battle, they could only silently cheer for the World Tree and wait for the situation to change. How could they give any substantial help? Wouldn't that be colluding with the enemy? Speaking of this, the Star Arc leader was furious. "Your World Tree is so awesome. I thought you could beat the crap out of the three universal civilizations, but you can't even get past Black Star. Invading like this? What a joke." A few days later, the great victory in the shallow dimension quickly spread throughout the Galactic Society under the promotion of the three universal civilizations. Although they had agreed to Han Zhao's request and did not emphasize the battle between him and the Tree God, it still caused widespread excitement among the galactic residents. Initially, when they saw the World Tree invading from the secondary dimension at the beginning of the news, most of the galactic residents were terrified and panicked. Only when they saw the three universal civilizations successfully repel the enemy did they heave a sigh of relief and become excited. They were even more confident that the three universal civilizations would win this war, because they felt that staying in the explored universe was much safer. The chaos on the various refugee planets was greatly reduced. Many galactic residents settled down, and the frequency of demonstrations decreased. There were also fewer people who sneaked away, making it easier to manage. This time, the Holy Covenant revivers who suddenly appeared became an important contributor to the war. However, they left after the battle and did not communicate with the three universal civilizations. Their actions were very mysterious, arousing the curiosity of the galactic residents. On the internet, many galactic residents recognized the identities of some of them based on the weighing cards. They were all famous beyond grade, as in history. Therefore, all the clues pointed to Black Star, who controlled the Sanctum Revival. Countless galactic residents enthusiastically let their imaginations run wild, and various versions of guesses spread on the internet. Chasing the text in the conference hall of the Beyond Grade A Association's main planet. All the Beyond Grade has gathered in the hall and stared at Han Shao, who was sitting on the main seat, talking at once. Black Star, you have to give us an explanation, right? Who are those revivers? That's right. You've been hiding it from us all this time. This must be related to you. If you say you don't know, I'll ignore you for a month. Most of the people who asked for the Beyond Grade as of the current era, while Biger and the other revivers did not speak and just watched from the side. Ahem, that. Kasui raised his hand slightly and coughed. Actually, I know a little about this too. As soon as he said that, everyone's eyes sharpened and gathered on him. No way. When Black Star first revealed his cards about the Sanctum Revival, you already knew in advance. How did you know now and even help Black Star hide it from us? In the past, when we saw your thick eyebrows and big eyes, we felt that you were experienced, so we chose you as the vice president. Now, it seems like you've completely turned into Black Star's appearance. Sierran was envious. We're all vice presidents, so why do you know so many secrets while I'm kept in the dark like a fool? You guys are just treating me as a decoration. Damn it, I can also be a trusted aide. I also want to wear the same pants as Black Star. Han Shao was a little surprised. He turned to look at Kasui. When did you find out? I guessed. Kasui smiled embarrassedly. During the training, Han Shao had entered the sanctum once and asked Oathkeeper to contact Kasui. Although Oathkeeper did not reveal the situation of the Holy Covenant, Kasui had a preconceived notion that Oathkeeper was Han Zhao's secret subordinate outside. After some deduction, he guessed that Han Shao might have a backup plan and might have hidden a group of revivers. Therefore, Kasui was not surprised that the Holy Covenant organization had appeared. Instead, he had a feeling of as expected. Han Shao thought for a moment and guessed where Kasui had found out. He did not mind and turned to look at everyone with a smile. I originally planned to explain this to everyone. Back then, when the three universal civilizations clashed with the association, I deliberately hid a group of revivers and formed a special group. If anything happened to us, we still had a way out and a way to counter the enemy. So don't blame me for hiding it. You all know what happened after that. The World Tree suddenly invaded, and we made peace with the three universal civilizations and fought against the enemy together. Therefore, this trump card was kept. Not long ago, when the secondary dimension battlefront was in danger, I asked them to come out and provide support. Everyone nodded. They all accepted this explanation and had no objections. However, Sun Hunter asked casually, since they've been exposed, why didn't they join the association? Han Shao smiled. This involves our future development path. In my imagination, a portion of the Beyond Grade as should form an organization in the dark, one in the light, and one in the dark with the association. Unless something big happens, they will stay in the dark. These mysterious revivers are the first batch of members that I have my eyes on. They're not all following orders, and they also have thoughts of retiring. So this mission is very suitable for them. I plan to keep this system as a place for the Beyond Grade as to retire. When everything stabilizes, if anyone is tired of disputes and politics, they can choose to retire from this organization and regain their identity. As soon as he said that, everyone's eyes flashed. They caught Han Zhao's unspoken words and could not help but look at him deeply. It seemed like Black Star was no longer satisfied with the association's form after advancing to the Transcendent Grade. When the war ended, he would most likely use the official position recognized by the three universal civilizations to do something big. War is indeed a catalyst for ambition. Many Beyond Grade is sighed. However, from a personal point of view, They did not reject this point. Black Star was ambitious, which is a good thing for their group. Then I have no objections. Us too. You're the one with foresight. Everyone expressed their agreement one after another and began to flatter him with familiarity. Han Xiao smiled. Just as he was about to speak, the interface suddenly vibrated. He was slightly stunned and quietly opened the interface. When he saw the notification, his eyes lit up. Version 5. 5 activated. Retrieving data. Retrieving data complete. Player forum opened. Welcome to Galaxy version 5. 5. Black Star's era. War of all realms. Oh, this small update is finally over? Han Xiao was instantly energized. The players had gone offline more than 10 years ago and updated a small version. He did not expect the cute leaks to return at this time. However, Han Xiao was not happy for long. His attention was attracted by the change in the name of the version. War of all realms? Han Xiao narrowed his eyes. According to his experience, the note of the version update was usually on the eve of some major event. Now that the 3 universal civilizations were in a good situation, the world tree was in a passive position, but the version had such a name. This made him feel that things were not simple. Whose War of all realms is this version referring to? Are we going to overturn the world tree? Or is the world tree attacking the 3 universal civilizations like in my previous life? Now that they're stopped outside the border of the flickering world, do they still have such a chance? It's best to investigate before it rains. Han Xiaoxin pondered, his eyes flickering. Chapter 1441. In one of the bases of the Black Star Corps, white lights flashed, and countless army players appeared out of thin air. Very soon, there was a sea of people. The many veteran players were already familiar with the process. They opened the interface to check the version while opening the quantum network to browse the current time. Oh, the time span this time is only a little more than 10 years. It's much shorter than last time. It's just a small version update. It's all right. Didn't the 3 universal civilizations say that the World Tree civilization will invade our country in more than 10 years? The time now should be just right. It seems like the Galaxy Times guessed right. This is the time node of the update, directly entering the stage of the war. It's not easy to have a universal war. As long as it's not skipped by version update, I'll be satisfied. The players browsed through the events of the past 10 years and casually chatted. During the 10 years of preparation for war, there was nothing noteworthy. Only the changes in the Beyond grade has attracted the interest of many players. No way. Loggy is already a Beyond grade, eh? I'm so sorry. Hardaway, that gambling dog, hasn't advanced yet? Ha 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 ha. I knew he wouldn't make it. Aotion's life is really smooth. Is this the new generation? F***CK? ES God has been released. And he even killed a tree king? Amazing. F***CK. There are too many new Beyond grade as. The cost of collecting the full set of Wayne cards has increased again. F***CK. Has Black Star and the Dragon Emperor made it public? Damn it. There's no hope for me anymore. When you were born, I wasn't born. When I was born, you were already old. Is this the sad life? What are you thinking? Black Star is mine. They're a perfect match. How can a monster like me object? Whoa. Many army players flipped through the rumors of the Beyond grade as one after another, and their gossipy hearts burned. Originally, other than Han Xiao and a few other Beyond grade, as the other top experts actually did not interact much with the players. The players did not have a deep impression of them, so they would not deliberately remember them. However, the existence of the Wayne cards became the link that connected the two sides, causing the players to be familiar with the names and deeds of the various Beyond grade as. However, compared to casual players, professional players were more focused on utilitarian matters. They weren't in the mood for gossip. Instead, they focused on gathering useful information and discussing it in groups of 2s and 3s. Maple Moon analyzed softly. After this update, there's an additional War of all realms at the end. The World Tree will most likely be able to fight its way in. This should be the theme of the version. I checked online. The World Tree has already reached the border, but it's temporarily blocked by the Galactic Alliance Army. Furthermore, the world tree invaded from the secondary dimension a few days ago and was repelled in the end. The current situation of the three universal civilizations is not bad. Maple Moon looked at the interface and said, with this minor update, the level cap has been unlocked. This way, the players in the first few echelons should be able to enter the Calamity grade. Mad Blade nodded in agreement. As our overall strength increases, there will be more ways to increase our strength. Moreover, some of our abilities will undergo a qualitative change. I feel that this season's Pro League will undergo a major change. This time, the small version update did not take too long, and the main storyline quest had not changed. What the pro players were most concerned about was that the level cap had been unlocked from level 180 to level 200. There was more room for improvement. Let's go to the front lines first and let the command center arrange the combat missions. Let's go. If we're late, the mission won't be ours. The players were in an uproar for a while before finally figuring out the current situation. They all boarded their spaceships and headed to the front lines. On the other side, on the main planet of the Beyond Grade A Association, Han Xiao had already announced the end of the meeting. When he returned to his room and saw many players coming online through the surveillance, his expression was a little strange. Have their levels been unlocked to level 200? As long as they don't have too many subclasses and have a slightly normal growth rate, almost all of them will be able to enter the Calamity grade. This way, the scale will be large. If it was in the past, Han Xiao would have been afraid, but now he had enough confidence. Even if a large number of players entered the Calamity grade, they would not be able to cause much trouble for him. Although he had reached the Transcendent grade, he had not reached his limit yet. He still had to harvest leaks. However, before the last update, he had already harvested a large number of players' assets. Now that the players had just come online, their wallets were dry. He still had to wait for them to earn for a while before he could generate enough income. Furthermore, Han Xiao had found another way to farm EXP, which was to use psionic waves to kill on the battlefield. This speed was much faster than the mechanical army, and the cost was extremely low and convenient. Even if there was a level penalty, and the ordinary members of the World Tree could only provide the lowest 1 point of EXP, they could not withstand the power of the psionic waves. The people of the World Tree kept reviving. They were the perfect targets to farm EXP. Han Xiao decided that he had to grab hold of both hands and be tough on both sides. The players were on track, so there was no need to worry too much. What Han Xiao cared more about was the meaning of the version name. He did not have a clue yet. No matter what, this is a clue, Han Xiao nodded. Under his influence, the direction of the galaxy was completely different from his previous life. He had also come into contact with many secrets that the players in his previous life could not come into contact with. He did not dare say that he understood this universe completely. Even if his suspicions based on the version name were just groundless accusations, it was still better to be cautious. Han Xiao closed the interface, summoned Philip, and gave him some instructions. He then changed into the king and teleported to Floating Dragon. Now that the Blue Star civilization had migrated, Floating Dragon had followed them and was currently taking refuge in the central galaxy. In the huge Dragon Emperor Palace, a light flashed, and Han Zhao's figure appeared out of thin air. He turned around and walked out, heading all the way to Aesop's residence. Since there were no clues, he would ask for metaphysics. He soon arrived at his destination and pressed the doorbell. "You're here?" Aesop opened the door and invited Han Xiao in. Han Xiao did not stand on ceremony and sat down on the sofa. He smiled and said, "Why didn't you predict that I would come and find you this time? Prophecies don't work every time. Ever since you advanced to the Transcendent grade, my prophecies about you have become more and more difficult." Aesop shook his head. 88-inch, that's true. Han Xiao nodded. He had already done the test. The information form projection of the Transcendent grade had sublimated, as if it had a certain degree of information form concealment characteristic. It was very difficult for outsiders to predict him. "Why are you looking for me?" Aesop paused and said, "If it's a prophecy, please forgive me for being powerless. I can't use my ability for the time being." What's going on?" Han Xiao was slightly stunned. He looked at Aesop carefully and realized that Aesop's face was dispirited, as if he was seriously ill. When I received the passive prophecy, I suffered a backlash. The target of my prophecy was a mage I had never seen before. He inflicted damage on me, and my spirit still needs time to recover. Before that, I can't help you. Aesop coughed, his tone a little weak. You didn't tell Ames? Han Xiao raised his eyebrows. No, she's too impulsive. If she knew about this, I wonder how she would react. Aesop shook his head. He would rarely reveal important foresight information to Ames and would usually only discuss things with Han Xiao. He continued, Don't worry. I was going to tell you, but you went to the battlefield while I was hesitating. When did this happen? Han Xiao asked. Calculating the time, I triggered the prophecy. It happened to be the eve before the expeditionary army outpost was attacked. Hearing this, Han Xiao narrowed his eyes. What a coincidence. Could it be the Secret Tree King? This guy was indeed a very powerful mage and was very suspicious. Do you have any other memories of that mage? No, my prophecy image was shattered. I can't remember what he looks like at all. I see. Han Xiao pondered and said, I might have guessed who this person is. He should be an expert from the World Tree. How is he? Did he cause any danger to you? Don't worry, I've already sealed him. If you're angry, you're welcome to visit him anytime. Then forget it. I don't have that kind of bad taste. Aesop waved his hand. Han Xiao smiled, stood up, and was about to leave. At this moment, Aesop suddenly said, By the way, when are you and Ames going to reproduce? Han Xiao paused and said helplessly, How would I know? I can do it any time, but she doesn't agree. We can only see when she changes her mind. She's just being stubborn. As long as the atmosphere is right, everything will be fine. Aesop immediately perked up and said, Back then, I traveled around the galaxy and made countless females fall in love with me. If it wasn't for my unwillingness, my children would already be all over the star fields. Let me tell you, I have a lot of experience in this area. Come. Let me teach you some tricks. You should keep them for yourself. I don't need them. Han Xiao's eyes twitched. Why don't you need them? These are all spiritual treasures left behind by our predecessors. Once you learn these tricks, convincing Ames will be a piece of cake. I won't teach anyone else. Hey, don't go, at least listen. Get lost. Han Xiao did not want to bother with this old scumbag with a rich love history. He changed into the king and teleported away, leaving Aesop sighing in the room with a face full of regret. Holy Covenant Organization Base, Destiny's Child Laboratory. With a flash of light, Han Xiao teleported over. The surrounding Holy Accord experiment personnel raised their heads to take a look, but they were not surprised and continued with their work. Han Xiao woke up Destiny's Child and communicated with him for a while. He asked Destiny's Child to make a prophecy about his concerns. After a while, Destiny's Child shook his head, indicating that he could not predict anything. Seeing this, Han Xiao knew that the prophecy method was most likely useless. The other party had most likely used some kind of information concealment method. Looks like I can only strengthen the screening and pay attention to any abnormalities, Han Xiao pondered. Central Galaxy, Desolate Universe Belt. In a secret base of the Star Alliance, a group of observers gathered in a large room and stared at the device in the middle of the room. This device was a cylinder with a diameter of about 10 meters and a height of about 15 meters. It was silver gray in color, and there were many wires connected to its surface. The indicator lights were flashing crazily, and there was a buzzing sound. This was a long-distance material transmission device. After a while, the material transmission device suddenly shook and the top and bottom separated. The cylinder above slowly rose, and they saw that the inside of the cylinder was hollow. There was a space covered by a transparent cover, and a white suitcase lay quietly inside. My hometown sent the thing over. The captain of the observers stepped forward and twisted the valve, opening the cover of the material transmission device. He picked up the white suitcase and opened it on the spot. There were 3 white cans in the suitcase without any labels. He took a pistol-like device from one of the team members and scanned the 3 cans one by one. After looking at the readings, he nodded. Confirmed. They're all microscopically encoded particles. As soon as he said that, everyone present was overjoyed. The Star Alliance had ordered the observer team to secretly leak information about the three universal civilizations. They had thought of many ways, including using the energy of the supernova explosion to transmit wave-like information to the entire universe, and using the star position communication method to secretly transmit information to the World Tree. But they were all rejected. In the end, the Star Alliance chose to encode the tiny particles. Using the microscopic transcription technology, they unfolded the particles in a low dimension and recorded a huge amount of information. Then, they returned to their original form, turning the extremely tiny particles into information carriers that contained all the information they wanted to leak. The Star Alliance had created a bunch of encoded particles in batches and was prepared to throw these encoded particles outside the border through the wormhole, causing the storage device to self-destruct at a fixed time and attract the attention of the World Tree. At the same time, they would spread the particles. They believed that with the technology of the World Tree, they should be able to discover the abnormalities of these encoded particles and intercept them. The Star Alliance had developed for a long time, and they had very high technological capabilities. They also dabbled in information forms and had always provided information concealment for the observer team. They were not afraid of their actions being discovered by prophecies. They had secretly stolen the technological achievements of the Galactic Society for many years and knew the Galactic Society like the back of their hands. They were confident that they would not be discovered. Chapter 1442. Suspicion. Once he had his suspicions, he had to take action. This had always been Han Zhao's style. He had asked Philip to monitor the various intelligence in the Galactic Society and report any abnormal movements immediately. However, after being cautious for a few months, he did not discover anything, and the situation did not change. Because of the pivotal snake, the World Tree civilization impatiently attacked the border defense circle time and time again. The other troops entered the battlefield as if they were free, not caring about the damage. However, the Galactic Alliance army was not to be trifled with. How could their defense line be broken so easily? Even in the secondary dimension battlefront, the World Tree Blessed race invaded several times. However, with Han Zhao guarding the shallow dimension, he was like an unshakable guardian god. The Blessed race invaded time and time again, but they were defeated time and time again. They abandoned countless fleets and ran away, allowing Han Zhao to kill them all. The worst thing was in terms of individual strength. The World Tree realized that it was completely crushed. At the front lines of the flickering world, there was Aurora, the healer, God, and Herberlin, the top combatants. The World Tree experts exchanged injuries for zero, and the secondary dimension guardian was Han Zhao, who was at the transcendent grade. Even the Tree King did not dare to show his face, let alone the others. All of a sudden, the holy tree emissaries, ancestral spirits, and army leaders realized that they were no longer useful. Neither battlefront needed them. If they had already invaded their homeland, they could still rely on their individual strength to move around the universe flexibly, just like special forces, dragging the energy of the enemy civilization and causing all kinds of damage. However, in the current situation, they could only wait for orders. After a few months of war, the tens of millions of players had also reintegrated into the atmosphere of war. They could choose from both battlefronts, and the missions were much more abundant. Their wallets also slowly became thicker. Unfortunately, version 5 had unlocked a new level cap. The player's main goal was to level up, and they did not have much money left to spend. As more and more players stepped into the Calamity grade, a qualitative change slowly appeared. The players became more prominent on the battlefield, and the three universal civilizations paid more attention to them. From the perspective of the upper echelons, the explored universe was rich in resources. For a long time, with their strong productivity, they would be able to fight against the World Tree civilization. However, there was always an end to this path, and the World Tree was still better in this aspect. As time passed, the three universal civilizations felt that they would start to weaken sooner or later, and the various hidden dangers of wartime policies would gradually appear. Of course, this situation would not happen anytime soon. They were not the ones who were in a fix. The three universal civilizations were now sitting firmly on the high platform, and they wanted to fight a war of attrition more than a world tree. They wanted to buy time and wait for the pivotal snake to grow. Therefore, players with calamity-grade potential who could not be killed were important strategic weapons in the eyes of the three universal civilizations. They were not afraid of exhaustion. Over the past few months, the situation had been good. The entire galactic society was gradually filled with confidence and optimism. Although the players did not know about the pivotal snake, after analyzing the situation on the surface, they felt that the three universal civilizations were not in a stable situation this time. After learning Black Star's operation, the rest would be F2A. How could Flying Dragon face loose? Just as everyone's morale was at its peak, Han Xiao discovered some clues. The various members of the Supercluster Alliance have all set up secret stargates in the country and gathered a large number of civilians, countless supplies, and long-distance battleships. They seem to be preparing to escape. As Han Xiao flipped through the information, his expression changed as he pondered. Facing the invasion of foreign enemies, it was normal for these advanced civilizations to leave a way out for themselves and make backup plans. Even though everyone was optimistic about the war and their confidence was boosted, it was understandable for the advanced civilizations to still plan for the worst. Han Xiao had noticed the supercluster's actions previously and did not take it seriously. However, because of the suspicion of the War of the Realm and the few months of peace, Han Xiao's paranoia had become more and more serious. Now, everyone was a little suspicious. Even though the Supercluster Alliance's preparations were reasonable, they were still a little eye-catching to him. Han Xiao recalled the performance of the Supercluster Civilization's troops on the battlefield. Although they had completed the mission, it gave him the feeling that they had not used their full strength. In the past, he thought that the Supercluster was worried that they would be used as cannon fodder by the three universal civilizations, so they were cautious. However, now that he was suspicious, he felt that there was something else going on. After all, the Supercluster Alliance and the three universal civilizations had a deep-rooted conflict. In this kind of foreign invasion, if the Supercluster Alliance did not seize the opportunity to do something, it would not be their style. I have a feeling that they're not just leaving a way out. They have other plans. Han Xiao stroked his chin and made up his mind to collect the secrets of the Supercluster Alliance. In any case, regardless of whether there was a problem or not, it was not a bad thing to investigate. It would be best if he could find something that could be used against them. After sending a message to Philip to pay attention to this information, Han Xiao exited the quantum network and walked out of the room. A huge cloud appeared in front of him. It was the pivotal snake hiding inside. Beside it was the breeder, the realmless king, and a bunch of mechanical troops acting as bodyguards. Everyone was currently in a secondary dimension, allowing the pivotal snake to devour to its heart's content. Han Xiao had been using the mobile fortress to follow closely behind them. While protecting them, he was also thinking about how to speed up the growth of the pivotal snake. For this reason, he had no choice but to give the pivotal snake a comprehensive examination. Naturally, the pivotal snake was unwilling, but under his strong control, it could only stare coldly and unwillingly at Han Xiao as he played with its body. After checking its body, Han Xiao realized that the pivotal snake did not have a gender. It could also be said to be hermaphrodite. After a more detailed inspection, Han Xiao also figured out the reproduction method of the pivotal snake, which made him feel complicated. The reproduction of the pivotal snake required the use of the secondary dimension that gave birth to a consciousness to carry out mating. It absorbed the secondary dimension in another way and turned it into an embryo. This kind of behavior could be said to be independent reproduction or hybridization. In any case, it did not need the help of its own kind. However, it made sense. The pivotal snake would most likely not be able to meet another of its own kind in its life. Furthermore, it was being hunted down by the world tree. If it could not reproduce alone, it would have been extinct long ago. The problem was that the pivotal snake usually ate secondary dimensions. In other words, what did this snake do to its food? Furthermore, after sleeping with it, it even ate it and absorbed it as nutrients. It could even eat it after sleeping with it. Was it a female mantis? All kinds of thoughts flashed through Han Zhao's mind. He looked at the pivotal snake that was not polite to him and had some ideas. No matter how much the pivotal snake eats, it will at most become fat. It will not enter the mature period quickly. The growth of living creatures has to follow the rules. However, if I change the foundation of its existence, I wonder if it will be useful. A bold idea popped up in Han Xiaoxin's mind. If the pivotal snake was allowed to develop properly, who knew how long it would take for it to reach adulthood? However, if he used life transformation virtual to turn it into an artificial intelligence life form, then the difference in its life form would be like heaven and earth. Could he directly inject a large amount of data to accelerate its maturation and quickly reach adulthood? The only problem was that he did not know if the pivotal snake could still retain its sense of the world tree after its form of existence changed. Logically speaking, if the sense came from the information form level, then no matter what type of life form the pivotal snake became, it should not have any effect. However, Han Xiao did not dare to take the risk now. There was only one pivotal snake, and he could not reverse it. If he broke it, it would be gone. If only I could get another one for me to experiment with. Han Xiao narrowed his eyes and looked at the pivotal snake with ill intentions. Why don't I let this snake give birth now? Speaking of which, it's still a baby. Can stand up. Han Xiao fell in a deep thought. Just as Han Xiao was studying the breeding profession, the World Tree Civilization made some discoveries. In the Tree King Palace, the ancestral Tree King listened to the report from the front line and revealed a subtle expression. Are you sure? The particles you intercepted recorded a large amount of information about the enemy civilization? Yes, these particles used microscopic recording technology that involves dimension conversion. We're still trying to decipher it and restore the specific content, but we can't be wrong. There are many spatial coordinates and star maps of the enemy's territory inside. There's such a thing? The ancestral Tree King's eyes flickered. The two armies were in a stalemate at the border, and the World Tree had also built a base, placing it at the entrance of the three universal civilizations. Not long ago, an urgent report came from the front line. The radar of the frontline base had discovered signs of an abnormal space reaction and a weak energy explosion somewhere a certain distance away, so they sent out an exploration team to investigate, afraid that the three universal civilizations would not be satisfied with defending and would cause some trouble. However, after some inspection, they found that it was a temporary wormhole that had disappeared by the time the exploration team arrived. To be cautious, the exploration team followed the traces of the energy explosion and searched. The microscopic field of vision scanner quickly discovered that there were some floating special particles in this area that seemed to have been thrown in all directions by the explosion. Thus, the exploration team collected a portion of them, but they did not expect to find a large amount of information related to the three universal civilizations. As soon as he found out about this, the ancestral Tree King's first reaction was to deceive them, thinking that it was fake information from the three universal civilizations that wanted to trick them with false information. His second reaction was that there was a traitor in the three universal civilizations, and for some reason, they wanted to collude with the enemy. This was not the first time the World Tree had encountered such a thing. During their conquest of the universe, as long as their opponent was a composite civilization alliance, they would not be united. His third thought was that there was a third party watching them, wanting to add fuel to the fire and take advantage of the situation. The World Tree was also very experienced in this. The variable actually appeared here. These thoughts flashed through the ancestral Tree King's mind, and a strange expression appeared on his face. He seemed to heave a sigh of relief, but also seemed to have a cold smile on his face. He had been at a loss for the past few months because of the war with the three universal civilizations. He did not expect someone to give him a pillow when he was about to doze off. The most important thing now was to confirm if the information was real. As long as it was not fake information deliberately released by the three universal civilizations, there would be a turning point in the battle. Decipher all the content as soon as possible and sort it all out. At the same time, try to reverse engineer the origin of this wormhole. The Ancestral Tree King did not hesitate and asked the research department to produce results quickly. Whether it was a traitor or a third party, no matter what their purpose was, no matter if they wanted to use the World Tree or not, it was not important to him. What was important was to kill the three universal civilizations and remove the Mother Tree's greatest threat. As for the other problems, when the threat was eliminated and the World Tree was invincible again, there would be plenty of time to slowly resolve them. The Ancestral Tree King had always been able to grasp the main conflict. On the other side, in the strategic command room of the Siebert Fortress in the Flickering World, reporting there's an abnormal spatial reaction outside the border. It is suspected to be a wormhole. A notification came from the military radar. The many military officers present went up and looked at the source. They found that the abnormal signal was outside the border defense circle, not too far from the World Tree's base. Can we investigate and see what's going on there? A staff officer asked. There is insufficient information. It is recommended that we investigate on the spot, the military artificial intelligence replied. Hearing this, everyone looked at each other and muttered softly. The Border Defense Army was stationed at various posts in the defense circle. If they left this place, it would be very difficult to deal with the tide of the World Tree fleet without the endless defenses and fast support channels. Therefore, the Border Defense Army had always been focused on defense and would not take the initiative to attack. The source of the abnormality was outside the defense circle. If they wanted to investigate on the spot, they had to send their fleet out. Not only were they keeping an eye on the World Tree's movements, the World Tree had also been keeping an eye on the defense circle. Once the Border Defense Army sent out a fleet, the World Tree would definitely send troops over to fight in the field and eat up their fleet. Furthermore, from the distance, the World Tree was closer to the source of the abnormal reaction. Even if they sent troops over, there was an 80% chance that they would not gain anything. Generally speaking, the border troops rarely sent people to carry out such high-risk missions of unknown value. However, the players happened to be suitable for this job. Thank you, Huang Mao Yuan, for your 10,000 reward. End of chapter. Chapter 1443. Our mission this time is to investigate the abnormal signal area outside the border defense circle. There's a high chance that we will encounter the World Tree fleet. Everyone, be prepared to sacrifice yourselves. In the cabin, the light blue projection of the remote commander floated on the tactical command platform, explaining the details of the mission to the players in the room. If it was a normal person, he would not have mentioned sacrifice, but did not matter to the immortals. Those who participated in this mission were all players. Most of the time, this kind of groundless investigation mission was a mistake and would not yield anything. If not for the players who were in the Suicide Squad, the command center might not even be willing to send people to investigate. Most people were listening attentively, but Black T was distracted. He stayed behind the crowd and flirted with the female players on the forums. As an old player who had entered the pit in version 1.0, Black T had seen everything. Now, he was more interested in female players. The process of these combat missions was more or less the same. It was nothing more than charging, dying, taking the money, and finishing. In any case, no matter how much the commander said, when it came to the actual execution, they would still have to adapt to the situation. Black T was familiar with it and already had his own way of doing things. In his opinion, there was no need to listen to the details. If he had the time, he might as well flirt with a few girls. Not long after, the hyperdrive stream covering the ship dissipated and the reconnaissance team had already arrived at their destination. In the universe outside the window, there was a World Tree team that seemed to be searching for something in this area. The number of battleships was less than half of this reconnaissance team. As soon as they saw the reconnaissance team of the three universal civilizations, they quickly turned around as if they wanted to escape together. Discover the World Tree Fleet. Attack! The commander naturally did not hesitate and immediately gave the order. This reconnaissance team opened fire at the World Tree Exploration team without hesitation. The interceptor accelerated and chased after them with a group of players on board. Very soon, they caught a few World Tree Exploration ships that could not escape in time. Bang! 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 The interceptor shot out charge cabins one after another and bit the bodies of the enemy ships. They drilled through the outer armor and embedded themselves inside. The players inside boarded the ships and planned to control the spaceships. High-temperature flames spewed out, and laser energy shot out in all directions. The players immediately started a massacre in the exploration ship and fought with the members of the World Tree. It could be said that they were unstoppable. The World Tree warriors were either burned to ashes, beaten into meat patties, or shot into sieves. The ground was filled with incomplete corpses. Black Tea tilted his body slightly and dodged a laser beam. He pointed his sword finger, and a white pugilist energy shot out. It was sharp and cold like an energy sword, piercing through the chests of the 3 World Tree warriors, instantly killing them. What do you think? Handsome, right? Little brother, you're so awesome. Can you bring me to clear dungeons in the future? The female player in the video acted coquettishly. That depends on your performance. Black Tea had a smug smile on his face as he spoke in the private chat channel. Even though he was on the battlefield, he was still flirting. He turned on a video call so that his good sister could see his heroic bearing. In the past few months, he had already completed the level 180 promotion mission and successfully advanced into the Calamity grade. He was undoubtedly the leader among the current players. This kind of boarding battle was no pressure to him at all. He could fight while flirting with girls with ease. The reason why he chose the pugilist class was naturally because it was the most gorgeous of the 5 classes. Whether he was strong or not was a matter of the version, but whether he was handsome or not was a matter of a lifetime. While Black Tea was chatting, his teammates had already crushed the World Tree warriors and were getting further and further away. Watching the group of people leave happily, Black Tea did not follow them. He smiled and shook his head, revealing the demeanor of an elegant master. He gave pointers and said, "You can't let your head get carried away when you're doing a mission. Look at these people. They're classic examples of the opposite. It wasn't easy for them to get the chance to be unparalleled, but they're already being reckless. You have to use your brain when you're on a mission." After casually showing off, Black Tea did not follow the main group. He turned around and walked into the corridor alone. He casually broke through the cabin wall or floor and went straight into the belly of the ship. Very soon, he arrived in front of a door without any obstructions. On it were the words Analysis Room and Research Area written in the language of the World Tree civilization. Because the spaceship had been invaded, all the guards had gone to protect the energy core, power engine, control center, bridge, and other key areas. There was no one here, only some simple defense facilities, which were dismantled by Black Tea in no time. "Little brother, why are you here alone?" The female player blinked and asked in confusion. "Hee, I told you to use your brain. Think about it. Our mission is to investigate the abnormal situation in this area, and the World Tree troops are one step ahead of us, but they're staying here as if they're looking for something. This proves that they've already discovered something. The World Tree exploration ship is equipped with a simple analysis laboratory, so there might be clues here. This is the main goal of our mission. If we can snatch the World Tree's exploration results, we won't need to take the risk of staying here to investigate. We might be able to keep our lives." Black Tea took care of all the defense facilities and walked into the room as he spoke. "Wow, you're so experienced." The female player was full of admiration. "It's all right, mainly because I've seen too much." Black Tea acted modestly and was secretly delighted. Although he was indeed experienced, he was just trying to show off his wisdom. He wanted to show that he was different from those pig trotters. As for whether he could gain anything here, it did not matter. However, at this moment, Black Tea suddenly stopped in his tracks and looked up at one of the transparent experiment cabins. There was a ball of light floating inside. When he looked over, the interface jumped and a notification popped up. You have triggered the hidden mission source of upheaval. Mission introduction. You have discovered an important clue that can change the situation of the war. It has a measurable value. If you bring it back, it will greatly affect the direction of the war. Mission requirements. Use a container to store the clue and bring it back to the 3 universal civilizations to report. Reward. Depends on the evaluation. Black Tea was stunned. No way, I was just bragging. Did I really get something? See, I told you there must be a clue here. Black Tea immediately became excited. He shared the mission interface with the girl and immediately went to the experiment cabin. After fumbling around for a while, he found a store button and pressed it. Sizzle. Tiny electric arcs flashed in the experiment cabin, guiding the ball of light into a palm-sized round tube container. The lids at both ends of the container automatically rotated and closed. The precision mechanical parts with strong magnetic force inside were embedded with each other, making cracking sounds. Then, the tube slid along the transparent pipe and popped out half of it from one of the holes on the console, which meant that it could be taken away. With a click, Black Tea opened the chest area of his mecha and stuffed the tube into one of the storage slots. Then, he closed the mecha and protected it. Then, without another word, he went back the way he came from and immediately reported the situation. This battle did not last long. The reconnaissance team chased away the World Tree Exploration team, and only the remnants of the enemy escaped. Because this place was relatively close to the World Tree base, the reconnaissance team did not want to chase after them. Originally, they did not care about sacrificing themselves and were prepared to stay here for a while to investigate the abnormal situation. However, after receiving Black Tea's information, the team changed their plan and retreated to avoid being chased by the World Tree's follow-up troops. As soon as the reconnaissance team left, the World Tree's reinforcements arrived late. They symbolically chased after them for a while and gave up when they approached the border defense circle. They watched as the reconnaissance team that had intercepted a coded particle returned to the 3 Universal Civilizations camp. Not long after, the container that Black Tea brought back was transported to the research center of the frontline base. Under the research of a group of scientists, its true appearance was gradually revealed. This is... The leader of the research team looked at the deciphered content and widened his eyes in shock. He took a few steps back, not daring to believe what he was seeing. "Leader, what did you find?" The officer who was waiting for the results felt his heart skip a beat and hurried forward. The leader of the research team came back to his senses and pounced in front of him. He grabbed the officer's shoulder and said with a panicked and anxious tone, "Bad news. Go and inform the 3 leaders and His Excellency Black Star. Our territory's star map has been leaked." As soon as he said that, the expressions of all the officers and researchers present changed drastically. What a pain in the ass. On the other side, in the Tree King's palace. "Your Excellency Tree King, according to your instructions, we have already handed a portion of the coded particles to the enemy. The other party should be certain that this is the information they have intercepted." "Well done." The Ancestral Tree King narrowed his eyes and nodded. At such a close distance, the frontline troops had long discovered the uniqueness of the coded particles. How could they have been so careless? All of this was done on purpose. It was only when the 3 Universal Civilizations reconnaissance troops defeated the World Tree Exploration team that their reinforcements arrived late. They pretended that they could not catch up, but it was all fake. The real goal was to let the 3 Universal Civilizations obtain a coded particle in a way that made them less suspicious. This move is not bad. When they see the leaked information, they will most likely suspect that there is a mole. They will definitely be in chaos. The Fortitude Tree King nodded. A powerful fortress can be broken from the inside. Suspicion is the best weapon, the Ancestral Tree King said calmly. No matter who leaked this information to him, in his opinion, they most likely did not want to be discovered by the 3 Universal Civilizations. He did the opposite. The Ancestral Tree King did not mind being used, but he would not make the person using him too happy. Since they wanted to use him, they had to bear the corresponding risks. On the other hand, Even if the person using him did not care, the Ancestral Tree King still wanted to use this method to cause suspicion and even division within the three universal civilizations. That's right. After all, not all civilizations can be as united as us. Everyone is connected to the mental network and is coordinated by the Mother Tree. There are no secrets. The Fortitude Tree King agreed with a smile. The Ancestral Tree King narrowed his eyes and glanced at him. He did not know if this was the truth or if there was a deeper meaning behind his words. In the three universal civilizations leader's office, Bruce, Lewis, and the Ethereal Pope received the emergency report about the coded particles from the front line and immediately held a meeting. Looking at the countless pieces of information about the explored universe that were being deciphered endlessly, the three of them were livid. Gloomy anger was faintly discernible on their faces. How bold! Someone actually colluded with the enemy. The Ethereal Pope slammed the table and said angrily, "No matter who it is, we have to find them." Bruce's eyes burned with anger. Originally, the situation was good. Relying on the Border Defense Circle and Han Shao, they could resist the World Tree for many years. However, before they could enjoy the good days of sitting on the high platform for long, there was a traitor in their family who leaked countless information. With these coordinates, the World Tree could jump through space, avoid the Border Defense Circle, and directly invade, opening countless battlefronts, breaking the stalemate, and regaining the initiative. They had worked hard for so many years to protect their territory from being invaded. Now, all their efforts had gone to waste. The three of them were already beyond furious. They wanted nothing more than to eat the traitor's flesh and drink his blood. At this time, Han Shao arrived. His remote projection appeared in the room. He frowned and went straight to the point. He frowned and said, "You said that the information of the Galactic Society was leaked? What's the exact situation? See for yourself." Bruce split a piece of the virtual screen and flew it to Han Shao. Han Shao glanced over and quickly understood the situation. His expression changed. His first reaction was that the World Tree was trying to sow discord, using some kind of method to obtain information, and then causing suspicion among them. However, this information was so detailed that it would be impossible for someone who had not been in the explored universe for a long time to collect it. Therefore, it was more credible if someone leaked the information. Either a traitor colluded with the enemy, or a third party took advantage of the situation, Han Shao said. "That's what we thought too," Bruce said with a gloomy expression. "But in comparison, the possibility of a traitor is higher." Han Shao stroked his chin and said, "If it's a traitor, the goal is definitely not to survive. With the current situation, the entire Galactic Society basically believes that we can resist the World Tree. So the traitor must have other goals, such as taking revenge on you guys, or taking advantage of the situation. We know that." Lewis's eyes flashed coldly. Before this, they had already discussed the suspects. Among them, the most suspicious were the Supercluster Alliance and the second-tier star cluster civilizations. Even the Beyond Grade A Association was somewhat suspicious, so the three of them were wary of Han Shao. Although the current good situation basically came from Black Star, the position of the three of them made them suspect Han Shao. This was because even though Black Star had made so many contributions, he still had a motive this time. Han Zhao's eyes suddenly flashed, and he said in a low voice, "Perhaps the World Tree deliberately leaked this information to cause internal strife among us." However, halfway through, Han Shao stopped and shook his head helplessly. Even if the World Tree did it on purpose, the information leak was real. Even if they guessed that this was the World Tree's plan, they could not let go of their suspicions. This was an open scheme. If the information leak was the work of a third party, it was unknown if they had predicted this step in advance. While helping the World Tree, they had also used the World Tree to arouse suspicion in the Galactic Society. Han Shao paused for a moment and put away these guesses. He changed the topic and said, "No matter what, the battle situation has changed. Prepare as soon as possible to deal with the World Tree's full-scale invasion. This is the most important mission." The three of them nodded, their brows filled with gloom. Although the three universal civilizations had made preparations for war in the various star fields, compared to the flickering world's border, the defenses in the other areas were naturally much weaker. There were also countless planets scattered around, allowing the enemy to enter the familiar rhythm of using battle to support battle. We have to find the traitor. Since he has done such a thing, he will definitely do something beneficial at some point. Sooner or later, he will be exposed, the ethereal Pope said coldly. The sooner we confirm the target, the better. I'll immediately order a special team to investigate this matter, Lewis said. This time, Han Xiao thought for a moment and said, I need to study these coded particles personally. Maybe I can find some clues. Hearing this, the three of them exchanged glances and nodded. We can give you a portion of the coded particles for research. I hope you can find clues as soon as possible. Okay, looking at the three of them, Han Xiao knew that he was also one of their suspects. He could not help but shake his head. At this time, he did not care about this. If he was sitting in the position of the three of them, he would not trust anyone either. I didn't expect the version name to come true so quickly. Who's causing trouble? It can't be them, right? Han Xiao thought to himself. The sneaky supercluster alliance and the figures of the Avengers flashed across his mind. Chapter 1444. Han Xiao learned the details from the three leaders, so he did not continue to participate in their brainstorming. He deactivated the remote projection and went to the Frontline Research Institute. As soon as he walked into the experiment hall filled with instruments, he could smell the anxiety and panic in the air. Countless researchers were coming and going, sweating profusely as they deciphered the encoded particles. Your Excellency Blackstar, Ruler Marbruce has given me a secret order. Please follow me. An officer who had been waiting for a long time immediately came up and led Han Xiao into the corridor. Not long after, the two of them arrived at a private laboratory. There was a team of experts working on the deciphering as well. However, unlike the deciphering of the content of the encoded particles outside, this place was also responsible for looking for the technical characteristics of the encoded particles. As soon as the door opened, Han Xiao could hear endless arguments inside. The structural deviation of this particle is obviously too high, forming a typical 3-branch ratio with Marvel's reading. It has the characteristics of K-pop warping technology and cyberspace conversion. It's definitely an application based on the third theoretical model of particle space science. It's just similar. You ignored the characteristics of dimensional conversion and the weakening of the nuclear force. This is obviously a technology that has been eliminated by the three universal civilizations. Han Xiao turned around and saw the experts gathered in front of the experiment table, pointing at the readings on the instrument and arguing. The same theory could be extended to all kinds of applications. It was just that although some technologies were similar in terms of appearance and final results, there were many differences in the actual process of use. In a less accurate but simpler way, it was probably equivalent to the difference in the order of strokes and the font of calligraphy. For example, there were 4 ways to write the characters, so there was naturally more than one way to modify the particles. By studying the characteristics of these technologies, they could reverse engineer the specific technology used by the encoded particles. This was also the focus of their research at this time, trying to narrow down the scope of suspicion through the technology used by the encoded particles. Han Xiao did not hide his footsteps and walked over. Only then did the experts realize that there was an outsider. Seeing that it was Han Xiao, they all lowered their heads and bowed respectfully. He looked up at the encoded particles floating on the experiment table and waved his hands. All right, stop arguing. Let me see what's going on. If you need anything, please tell us. The group of experts did not object and retreated to the side, obediently giving up the experiment table behind them. Blackstar was not only the most powerful individual in the galaxy who was on equal footing with the 3 leaders, but he was also one of the most powerful scientists. These researchers had always admired Blackstar, and almost half of the people present were his admirers. They were usually respected senior researchers, but now they were willing to be his assistants. Han Xiao glanced at the reading and studied the coded particles from the beginning. He quickly analyzed the data in his mind and quickly locked onto a few technologies. His expression changed slightly. As far as he knew, these technologies seemed to be used by the members of the Supercluster Alliance. Of course, he could not rule out the possibility of other organizations imitating them. According to normal judgment, the Supercluster Alliance is even more suspicious, but it could also be a deliberate framing. If that's the case, it's more like a traitor within the Galactic Society. With a thought, Han Xiao released his mechanical force, connected to the coded particles, and activated Bold Explorer. Buzz! Han Xiao's vision suddenly changed, and he arrived at a research institute with a different style. Many researchers were operating. A huge device was buzzing, and particles were being unfolded in low dimensions one after another. Information was recorded, and then they were restored, turning into coded particles that were injected into 3 white cylindrical containers. He could not control his vision and followed the 3 white tubes closely. The white tubes were placed into a suitcase and sent into the groove of a material transfer device. The next moment, his vision turned again, and he had already arrived at a secret underground base. He saw another material transfer device, and with a flash of light, the white suitcase was transferred over. A few life forms walked forward and opened it, revealing the white tubes inside. At this time, his vision changed again, and he came to a cosmic space. A blue and black wormhole opened in front of him, and then 3 white round tubes were thrown in. They passed through the colorful space tunnel and flew out from the other end of the wormhole. Then, the 3 white round tubes suddenly bloomed with hot light and self-detonated, releasing a wave of energy. The encoded particles inside were all thrown out. In the last scene, a World Tree exploration team, wrapped in green light, appeared in the distance. The illusion stopped abruptly, and Han Xiao's vision returned to normal. Looks like these coded particles came from nothing until they were intercepted by the World Tree. Han Xiao's eyes sparkled. Chapter 5:10 Literature. Although the illusion provided by Bold Explorer did not involve a specific location, Han Xiao was basically certain that a third party was behind this. There was no other reason. It was simply because the researchers he caught a glimpse of in the illusion were all unfamiliar species. And among the people who received the white suitcase, there was a species that should have disappeared in history long ago. The Lorax people, the intelligent species of the Lorax civilization. The Lorax civilization, the loser of the exploration era, was destroyed by the 3 universal civilizations. It should have been destroyed. Han Xiao flipped through the information and pondered. All kinds of possibilities appeared in his mind. From the looks of it, the Lorax civilization had survived, and their goal should be revenge. They were not fighting alone and had even found helpers. Those intelligent species had never appeared in the history of the 3 universal civilizations, so they should be foreign civilizations. According to the details of the information in the coded particles, this foreign civilization should have been lurking in the explored universe for many years without being discovered. TSK, another old enemy from the exploration era. The 3 universal civilizations are constantly paying back their debts for their past deeds. Han Xiao subconsciously rubbed his fingers. In his previous life, during the World Tree War, this foreign civilization did not appear and did not seem to have interfered with the direction of the war. Now, they took the initiative to backstab the 3 universal civilizations. Perhaps it was because this foreign civilization was in a different situation in different timelines, or perhaps it was because the situation in his previous life did not require their intervention. Of course, Han Xiao was not sure if this foreign civilization had taken action in his previous life. The players did not have the relevant information. Seeing that the 3 universal civilizations have the advantage, they want to destroy our strategy, destroy our advantage, and help the World Tree invade us. They want to take revenge by borrowing someone else's knife, but they also want to take advantage of the situation. They want to hide in the dark and watch the tigers fight. TSK, their intentions are sinister. Han Xiao guessed the motives of the foreign civilization while thinking of a solution. Although he had confirmed that a third party was behind this, he did not know the other party's location, so he could not follow the clues. If he searched on a large scale, it was very likely that the foreign civilization would withdraw all their spies and completely cut off all clues. Furthermore, without evidence, it would be difficult to convince the three hooligans. Although, with his status, even if there was no evidence, the leaders of the three universal civilizations would still value his words. However, now that even he was suspected, his credibility would naturally be reduced. The three leaders would at most be skeptical. Information form obliteration could see the connection threads, but this was a destructive skill. He could not see the specific situation and did not have the ability to trace it back to the source. Even if he erased this batch of coded particles, there was a high chance that the world tree still had others, and he would not be able to resolve this situation. After all, this skill erased an individual, not an entire concept or collective. It would not happen that if one or two people were killed, the others would forget about the entire human race. In fact, the effect of information form obliteration was very precise. It would not affect the target's other information too much. Therefore, the effect of this move would be more unique when it came to the split parts of a similar whole. If he used information form obliteration on the coded particles in front of him, Han Xiao estimated that the result would be that the three leaders would remember that he had taken some things to study, but they would forget that he was studying the coded particles. Furthermore, the experts present would not remember what they were studying previously, and the readings of these instruments would be erased. If he erased the other coded particles that the three universal civilizations had intercepted, Han Xiao felt that the three universal civilizations would probably forget about the existence of the coded particles, but they would remember that something had revealed the secret of the spy leaking the information. On the other hand, the World Tree remembered that they had given the three universal civilizations something, but they had forgotten to hand over the coded particles. However, they would not forget the coded particles in their hands. Han Xiao had made a hypothesis. If he used information form obliteration to deal with the entire World Tree civilization, the reaction of the three universal civilizations would most likely not be, "What have we been doing all these years?" but "We defeated a universal civilization with great difficulty, but we can't remember the name of that civilization." Therefore, information form obliteration had a very good effect on individuals with information differences, such as living beings. However, when dealing with individuals in batches, such as a grain of sand in a desert, a gun and a batch of standard firearms, the information gap could actually be deduced using logic. For example, if the expert team forgot what they were studying previously, but came to the experiment hall and saw that others were studying the coded particles, they would be able to deduce that they were also studying this thing previously. However, even if you used logic to deduce it, information form obliteration would still be in effect. You would subtly have memory deviations, quick forgetting, subconsciously ignoring, common sense fallacies, and so on. It was like you remembered something, but you suddenly forgot about it in the blink of an eye. No matter how hard you tried, you could not remember it. This kind of situation was not uncommon. It was also like you believing that the temperature of a normal person's bathwater was 80 degrees instead of 40 degrees. There would be a common sense deviation that was hard to notice, or the legendary 99 war. In any case, I have to think of a way to catch these spies. Currently, I can only use conventional methods to secretly gather information. It's best if there are more surveillance artificial intelligences in the quantum network. They most likely want to continue observing the follow-up effects of this borrowed knife to kill people. Seeing the three universal civilizations suffer, they probably didn't retreat. Sigh, if only I could get the World Tree's information form warning network. This thing is practically a black technology to prevent the territory from being infiltrated. Han Xiao shook his head helplessly. Compared to the World Tree, the territory of the three universal civilizations was like a sieve. Other people could enter and leave as they wished. They could even leave something inside, and the three universal civilizations would not be able to discover it in a short time. It was simply the standard configuration for victims. He stroked his chin and pondered. The goal of the World Tree and the Third Party was to cause internal strife in the Galactic Society. So the most important thing now was to not let the enemy's plan succeed. Since the spies could not be found in a short period of time, and the three universal civilization suspicions could not be dispelled, it seemed like he could only start from the suspects. It seems like the three universal civilizations are most suspicious of the Supercluster Alliance, and they happen to have other plans behind the scenes. However, I haven't found out what's going on yet. If this causes a misunderstanding between the two sides, I'm afraid we'll be in deep trouble. Han Xiao was helpless. In the past, he had always tricked the Supercluster Alliance, and it was not the first time they had fallen from the sky. However, it was the opposite now. He had to think of a way to reduce their suspicions so that they would not become scapegoats. Indeed, they had to pay for what they did. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.